Chapter 1819. On the top of Mount Yulong, the void seemed to freeze in an instant. A core disciple of Chinquin Taoist court, a peerless sword cultivator ranked in the top 15 of the Starry Sky Great Sage list, sacrificed himself to the sword at this moment. This was appalling. If someone dared to force Gu Songxin to such an extent on the Starry Sky ancient path, it would definitely arouse the wrath of Chinquin Taoist court. But in the Kunlun ruins, such a thing happened. Buzz. The surface of the pitch-black ancient sword was rolling with ferocious blood-colored Taoist patterns. Its blade buzzed and trembled, releasing Taoist light that rose to the sky. An illusory figure appeared, majestic and mighty. Just the aura it emitted made people tremble and suffocate. Spirit. This black ancient sword turned out to be a treasure with a spirit. All the spectators were shocked. Even Lin Sun couldn't help frowning, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. In his palm, the insignificance bow appeared quietly. Lin Sun, death is what you and I have to bear. At this moment, Gu Songxin's white hair was withered and his body was old and dim, but his eyes were burning with raging flames and hatred. Whoosh! The black ancient sword flew across the sky, and the sword spirit phantom rushed forward like a dominator, integrating its own power into this slash. The sword Qi, which was hundreds of meters long, could even split the ancient divine mountain. It was like an ancient sword god, making the world dim, leaving only a bright and blazing sword light. The sword light was dazzling and terrifying to the extreme. "Where is Wu Kei?" Lin Sun shouted softly. Buzz. The insignificance bow, which was made of piles of white bones, trembled, and the figure of a gray-haired young man appeared on the ferocious and rough bow. A shocking ferocious power also filled the world. "Little master, leave it to me." The gray-haired boy showed a bright smile, and his sharp eyebrows were full of vigor. He held the insignificant bow with one hand, and his fingers moved the bowstring, which was as red as blood, and suddenly looked up. His eyes were full of ferocity. Boom! It was like the creation of the world. The peak of Mount Yulong was engulfed by earth-shattering explosions and Taoist light. In the eyes, hearts, and souls of everyone, only dazzling and boundless light remained. It was like a peerlessly dazzling sun in the starry sky, and a terrifying aura of destruction spread out from it, causing it to be sufficient to shock even gods and ghosts. An indescribable fear crashed into the hearts of every spectator like a tsunami. They were overwhelmed with shock, exclaimed, and dodged. Many people were even shocked to the point of staggering to the ground with ghastly pale countenances. After a long time, the light on the peak of Mount Yulong gradually dimmed, and the fluctuations that wreaked havoc in the void began to calm down. Is it finally over? Many people heave a long sigh of relief at the same time, feeling that their backs were drenched in cold sweat. In such an unparalleled collision, even a Saint King would probably be heavily injured or killed, right? It's a pity that Gu Songxin sacrificed himself to the sword and sacrificed himself with Lin Sun at all costs. They are destined to be removed from the list in the future, one of the spectators sighed. Before he could finish speaking, his expression suddenly froze, and his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets, as if he had seen a ghost. At the same time, all the other spectators present were stunned and looked in the same direction. On the peak of Mount Yulong, a man stood in the void, holding a ferocious and rough white bone bow in his hand. His posture was as straight as a sword, as if he was going to pierce through the sky. The moment they saw this figure, everyone was stunned. All the people present were speechless, and they were all dumbfounded. Lin Sun, he was still alive. In the field, the ground was covered with blood, countless broken limbs, and Gu Songxin had disappeared. There was only a dark broken sword in the pool of blood, buzzing. The atmosphere in the field was dead silent. Everyone looked at Lin Sun in a daze and couldn't believe it. Under the desperate attack of sacrificing himself to the sword. In the end, Lin Sun was unharmed, while Gu Songxin died. That broken sword was the best proof of that. After a long time, someone opened his mouth in a trembling voice, but he couldn't say a word. Others were also in a trance. This battle was arranged by the descendants of the Wilderness Taoist Court, the Heaven and Earth Taoist Court, the Tao Battle Clan, and the Blood Kylan Battle Clan on the peak of Mount Yulong. In this battle, they had a large number of people and carefully planned to kill Lin Sun. But in the end, they were all dead. This battle began with Lin Sun climbing the mountain, killing all the way to the top of Mount Yulong. He alone broke the demon-slaying formation and slaughtered all the enemies. Hundreds of elites of major forces, and many of the best on the great saints' list of starry sky, all turned into a bloody mess on the ground. Only he stood alone on the top of the mountain, and all was silent. On the ancient bluestone mountain path, Ahu stretched her body. Her slender waist outlined a soul-stirring curve. She breathed a sigh of relief, and a pair of limpid eyes glanced at the dumbfounded spectators around her. She couldn't help but smile and said, "Are all of you staying here to spar with Demon God Lin?" Her voice was clear and melodious. The spectators came to their senses as if awakened from a dream, and immediately rushed down the mountain road with a sudden change of expression. Who dared to stay? The top of Mount Yulong was full of corpses, and pools of blood soaked the ground. How terrible it was! Once regarded as an opponent by Lin Sun, the consequences would be unimaginable. Demon God Lin? That's really an appropriate name. On the mountain road, many people were recalling and remembering the name that once shocked the ancient desolation realm, like the sun in the sky. It could be foreseen that with the spread of today's battle, this name would also be widely spread, and it was even very likely to spread to the starry sky ancient road. Few on the top of Mount Yulong, Lin Sun also breathed a long sigh of relief. The previous battle and killing had vented his inner resentment and anger, and he felt relaxed. He began to clean up the spoils. The treasures left behind by over 100 disciples of the great powers included divine treasures, divine materials, spirit herbs, precious treasures, and so on and so forth. It was a superb collection of treasures that flowed with multicolored light. The wealth of peerless figures like Gu Songxin, Kuan Julin, and Tao Jianxing was beyond imagination. "Young master, can you leave all those holy treasures to me?" In the insignificant bow, Wu Kei, the gray-haired young man, asked. "Yes." Lin Sun readily agreed. As a spirit, Wu Kei had been suppressed and tortured by Golden Crow for thousands of years. His own pneuma had long been severely damaged. The reason why he helped Lin Sun to fight before was that he had refined a lot of holy treasures and recovered a little bit of pneuma. But a little bit of pneuma was also consumed in this battle, so even if Wu Kei didn't mention it, Lin Sun would help him to recover. Clatter, Lin Sun waved his sleeve and threw all the holy treasures he had collected to Wu Kei, leaving only some useful treasures for himself. For example, the purple Een lightning whip, the spatial saint treasure, the Taiyu flying sword, and several other treasures of their own. Lin Sun's generosity made Wu Kei slightly stunned and surprised. "Young master, when I recover, I will help you conquer the starry sky and kill all the enemies in the world," Wu Kei said calmly. Lin Sun smiled and said yes. "Brother Lin." Ahu's yellow dress was fluttering, and she came from a distance like an ethereal fairy. "Ahu, this is yours. I've left all the holy treasures, but there are many rare magical materials and precious medicines, which should be useful to you." Lin Sun handed a storage bag to Ahu, which was part of the spoils. "Then I won't stand on ceremony." Ahu blinked her eyes with a smile. She didn't refuse. She had long been used to Lin Sun's style. She knew that if she refused, it would make Lin Sun feel like an outsider. And that was what Hu appreciated most about Lin Sun. He was never stingy when treating his own people. "Look, that's the mysterious forbidden area on Mount Yulong." Ahu pointed to the distance, which was covered with mist and exuded a mysterious and frightening aura. This place is regarded as one of the 9 secrets of the Kunlun ruins. In the previous battle, some people tried to escape into it to save their lives, but they died in an instant. Ahu stood beside Lin Sun with her beautiful eyes, and her moist red lips exhaled a fragrant breath. This also confirmed some rumors. Perhaps only those who hold the flying immortal token can enter it safely. Lin Sun nodded and remembered one thing. He communicated with Yuan Fatian through voice transmission. Brother Yuan, when you climbed the mountain, did you know who held the flying immortal token and entered the mysterious forbidden area? It seems to be me, Hungjin and Yimo. Yuan Fatian was also a little uncertain. By the way, those guys captured me and little Peng King and took our flying immortal tokens. A guy named Lu Xuanji entered the mysterious forbidden area with a group of masters. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. Really? Yes, it happened yesterday. The little golden-winged rock also said. Okay, I see. Lin Sun took a deep breath and looked at Ahu beside him. It seems that we have to go to this mysterious, forbidden area. Ahu nodded and said, of course. Without any hesitation, the two of them held the flying immortal tokens in their hands and flashed towards the area that was covered in mist. Clatter, as if entering the chaotic tide. The fog rolled and covered the sky. Nothing could be seen. Walking in it, there was a terrible taboo power. Lin Sun and Ahu could not help but feel a strong sense of danger in their hearts. However, before they could react, the flying immortal tokens in their hands buzzed and rushed out a brilliant, illusory halo, shrouding them. Buzz. After that, their figures were swiftly teleported away and vanished within the surging mist. This is when their vision became clear. Ahu couldn't help but be stunned. This was a world that seemed to be collapsing. Pieces of broken land floated in the void, looking extremely messy. At this time, she and Lin Sun were both standing on one of the floating lands. Looking around, the void was whistling with destructive wind. There was no vitality, and everywhere was barren like ruins. Is this one of the 9 secrets in the Kunlun ruins? Lin Sun was also surprised. He had thought that this place was destined to be a blessed land like the Peach Garden Secret Realm, where there was a great fortune and even a chance related to becoming an emperor. Chapter 1820. The broken world and the scene of desolation and destruction exuded an indescribable sense of desolation. Regardless of whether there is a fortune here or not, the most important thing now is to find me Hungjin and the others. Lin Sun's eyes were calm. He and Ahu took action together, flying through the void and searching among the floating continents. Oh, do you know about the 9 secrets of Kunlun? Lin Sun asked on the way, who sorted out his thoughts and said slowly, I've heard of it. I've heard that in the past, many powerhouses have come to the Kunlun ruins to search for fortuitous encounters. Among the areas they've explored, the 9 secret places are the most mysterious, and the 3 forbidden places are the most dangerous. The 9 secrets refer to the 9 secret realms. Mount Yulong is just one of them. In addition, there are 8 similar secret realms in other places of Kunlun ruins. Only those who hold the flying immortal token have the opportunity to enter the 9 secrets. That's why we were targeted by so many cultivators when we appear together. The flying immortal token is so useful that anyone would be jealous of it. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling strange. The starry sky ancient path is so vast and supreme, but why is there no flying immortal token? Instead, there is such a mysterious token in the 9 regions? Who said, I don't know the reason, but I've heard a rumor. Lin Sun was interested. What rumor? There's a saying that in ancient times, the 9 regions were the center of the world and regarded as the origin of the cultivation civilization. At that time, the ultimate ruins and the Kunlun ruins both had paths to the 9 regions. However, as time passed, the 9 regions underwent tremendous changes. They could no longer satisfy the needs of those who sought the Tao, and they gradually declined. After all, even you know that the higher one's cultivation is, the greater the demand for cultivation resources would be in order to ascend a higher path towards the Tao. Although the 9 regions are vast, when the cultivators reach the Saint Realm, the rules and aura of the great way between heaven and earth can no longer help them make progress on the path. So, in the endless years since ancient times, more and more cultivators have embarked on the journey to the starry sky ancient path. This isn't just happening in the 9 regions. it's also happening in other heavenly worlds. However, only the 9 regions have the endless ruins and Kunlun ruins. This is also the reason why the 9 regions possess such a mysterious treasure like the flying immortal token. Of course, this is only a rumor. I'm afraid not even emperors know the truth. At this point, Lin Sun vaguely understood. He suddenly had a bold idea. If one were to say that the 9 regions were the birthplace of the cultivation civilization, then, therefore, the ancient desolation realm was likely to be the core area. And the lower world in the ancient desolation realm was very likely to be the core of the core, the original land of origin. The reason why he had such an idea was because the lower realms were not simple. Just one of the 4 great god ruins, the ultimate ruins, was located there. But this was just Lin's idea. There were countless secrets in the universe and the starry sky. With his current experience, he was still far from being able to deduce the quintessence of the world and figure out the origins of the Grand Tao. What are the 3 great forbidden lands? Lin Sun continued to ask. Ahu said, one is the pilgrimage platform, which is rumored to contain the secret of becoming an emperor or ancestor. The second is the Tao suppression cliff, which is rumored to be the origin aura of all the Tao in the world. The third is the nameless forbidden land, which is the most dangerous place in Kunlun ruins. Since ancient times, almost all those who entered it died. When she spoke up to hear, Ahu's eyes flashed with fear. I once heard that during the primeval times, someone had once returned alive from the nameless forbidden region. However, he'd lost all his memories and he'd gone mad. Moreover, his body was coiled with the terrifying aura of calamity, and he perished not long after he returned to the ancient passageway. Before he died, he left a sentence, which is still spread on the starry sky ancient path. Lin Sun couldn't help asking, what did he say? The path of cultivation is broken, and there is nothing to seek. A few words came out of Ahu's lips. It was a very ordinary sentence, but it seemed to carry a kind of heart-palpitating power, which made Lin Sun's body a little cold. The path of cultivation was broken? Did this mean that even if a cultivator exhausted his life's efforts, even if he stepped into the emperor realm and became the ancestor of a Tao, he was destined to be unable to touch the end of the Tao? Don't take it seriously. This was just left by that crazy guy before he died. Although it was spread in the world, few people took it seriously. Ahu said, however, the nameless forbidden land is indeed the most dangerous place in Kunlun ruins. Until now, no one dares to try to approach it. Lin Sun nodded. After understanding the 9 secrets and 3 prohibitions, he realized that there were many secrets buried in Kunlun ruins, which were far beyond his imagination. This place seemed to be covered with a thick fog. No matter who was in it, they would feel that there were too many unknowns and secrets. We can only stay for half a year at most this time. After half a year, the path leading to the outside world in Kunlun ruins will be sealed and disappeared again. Ahu sighed with emotion. It's also destined that it's impossible for us to see through all the secrets in Kunlun ruins this time. It's been like this since ancient times. As the two talked, they had already crossed many floating lands. Just as Lin Sun was about to say something, a furious roar suddenly came from afar. Why not? Why? I, Lu Xuanji, am a pure-blooded descendant of the Blood Kylan clan. I was born with great luck. It's only been 300 years since I started cultivating, and I've already ranked 37th on the Starry Sky Great Saint list. With my background, I can't even obtain the recognition of the power of living beings. How many people in this world are qualified? Retreat, I'm going to fight again. His voice was filled with endless resentment and unwillingness. Lu Xuanji, Lin Sun, and Ahu looked at each other, and their spirits were lifted. Whoosh, Lin Sun circulated his Bai Qi and covered both of their figures. Then, he quietly approached the distance. Not long after, an extremely vast floating land appeared. It stretched across the void and covered an area of 1,000 miles. The mountains on it had collapsed, and not a single blade of grass grew. It was also extremely barren. Only the central area seemed very different. There was a mountain that was shaped like a big bell. It was majestic and tall, and its entire body was filled with chaotic qi, emitting an ancient and boundless aura. At the foot of the mountain stood a group of cultivators. There were more than a dozen of them, and each of them had extraordinary power and astonishing aura. The leader was a tall and imposing man in a blood-colored robe with a blood-colored horn on his head. He stood in front of the mountain with his long hair fluttering in the wind. His expression was gloomy and ferocious. His eyes were fixed on the stone wall in front of the mountain, and there was anger between his brows. There was no need to guess. This person must be Lu Xuanji, a pure-blooded descendant of the Blood Kylan clan. Lin Sun and Ahu approached quietly. With the cover of Bai Qi, their appearance did not attract anyone's attention. To their surprise, as they approached, the majestic mountain that looked like a big bell seemed to be growing larger and larger, more and more majestic. In the end, it gave people a feeling that it could support the universe and was unreachable. Lin Sun and Ahu became more vigilant and cautious. They didn't stop until they were thousands of feet away from Lu Xuanji and the others. They hid behind a pile of rocks. "Look at the stone wall of the mountain," Ahu said quickly. Lin Sun looked over and saw that the bottom of the mountain was suffused with chaotic qi. He could faintly see that the stone wall was smooth like a mirror, and it was branded with an ancient pattern. The sun, moon, and stars revolved around the pattern. On the boundless earth, there were countless ancestors and living beings worshipping and offering sacrifices with devout and solemn expressions. There was a bell hanging in the sky. This was an extremely ancient ancestor offering diagram, and it emitted a solemn and divine aura that was shocking. However, the object of their sacrifice was a bell. It hung below the sky, and it was shockingly large. The bell was branded with dense and obscure Tao markings. Even though it was only a stone inscription, when Lin Sun and the others looked at the bell, they actually felt a supreme, imposing aura that could suppress the world, shake the stars, and spread through the heavens. Undoubtedly, this diagram was extremely extraordinary, and it was very likely to contain a great fortune. Lu Xuanji probably wants to obtain the acknowledgement of this stone inscription. Who seemed to be lost in thought. After that, she was stunned because she noticed that Lin Sun's expression was slightly strange. His eyes were fixed on the bell, and he seemed to be very surprised and in disbelief. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I seem to have seen this bell before." Lin Sun's eyes were a little dazed. Who couldn't help but be surprised. This was one of the 9 secrets of Kunlun ruins, and that stone inscription wasn't something that anyone could see. But Lin Sun actually said that he had seen the bell in the stone inscription, which surprised her as well. Is that it? Scenes appeared in Lin Sun's mind. When he first entered the western border of the ancient desolation, he once participated in a Tao discussion lantern festival. It was on the Kangwu mountain, and there was an ancient green lamp tree on the mountain. He overcame all difficulties along the way, experienced numerous tests, and obtained various opportunities. For example, when Lin Sun comprehended the way of star obliteration for the first time in a forest of tablets, he saw the shocking scenes of the star obliteration emperor running all the way in the starry sky. For example, in the test of Tao discussion, Lin Sun obtained the miraculous ancient treasure, the Great Way Immeasurable Bottle. In addition, many unimaginable things happened in the Tao discussion lantern festival. Among them, the most unforgettable thing for Lin Sun was the appearance of a Taoist altar at the last stage with a bronze bell on it. The bell was only half a foot tall, and it was covered with dense Taoist patterns. It was mysterious and unfathomable. At that time, in order to fight for the bell, Lin Sun, Yu Linkong, and the others even had an extremely fierce battle. But in the end, no one was able to obtain the bell, because the karma involved in the bell was too great, and it was not something that Lin Sun could get close to at that time. Chapter 1821. Lin Sun's eyes were in a trance. Even though many years had passed, he still deeply remembered that bronze bell, and it was called the Grand Tao without rules. But was the bell in the ancestors' All Souls sacrificial painting really the lawless Great Way bell? Damn it! Suddenly, Lu Xuanji roared. He stood in front of the stone wall, with his long hair fluttering in the wind and his face full of anger. All the other cultivators nearby kept quiet out of fear. Big brother, countless cultivators have been here since ancient times, but no one has been recognized by this painting. A hoarse voice sounded. Since you can't do it, why don't you let go? There are so many fortunes in the Kunlun relic. It's not worth wasting your time and experience here. Only then did Lin Sun and Ahu see a thin figure sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the mountain amidst the chaotic qi. This man had disheveled hair, a handsome face, and indifference between his eyebrows. A ferocious, blood-red broadsword was inserted into the ground in front of him. Gray chains spread out from the blood-red broadsword, and the other end of the chains was inserted into a cultivator's body. What? Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank when he saw this. The figures chiseled and bound by gray chains were Mi Hongjin, Yi Moha, Qi Lingxiao, Yu Jiaming, and others. However, all of them seemed as if they'd lost their consciousness. Their expressions were stiff and their eyes were lifeless, and they seemed like numerous puppets. The gray chains pierced into their bodies like bloodthirsty leeches. Wisps of blood light could be seen spreading towards the blood-red broadsword inserted into the ground. Saint Blood refining method of weapons. A cold light flashed in Ahu's eyes. He recognized this weird method of weapon refining. It was a secret technique of the Blood Kylan battle clan. It was the cruelest and most overbearing way to refine a Saint Blood refining method of weapons. These bastards, their methods are truly cruel. Lin Sun's expression grew colder when he learned this. Ahu, let's act separately later. I'll kill Lu Xuanji, and you go to help me Hongjin and others. Ahu said without hesitation. Okay. Lin Sun thought for a while and said, the lives of Mi Hongjin and others are completely in the hands of that guy. When we take action, we must... Ahu said, don't worry, I promise to kill that guy as soon as possible. I won't let anything happen to your friends. Lin Sun nodded. Both of them were silent. They were accumulating power and were about to attack. Lu Chong, are you saying that I can't do it? In front of the stone wall, Lu Xuanji's face was gloomy as he looked coldly at the figure sitting cross-legged on the ground. The young man called Lu Chong said indifferently, I just don't want you to waste any more time. Lu Xuanji snorted coldly and turned his head to look at the ancestral 10,000 spirits sacrificial painting on the stone wall. This is the power of all living beings. As long as I can successfully control it, I can become a true sage and not a saint. Sage. The two only differ by a single word, but the realm they represent is completely different. Only those who succeed in the great sage realm can be called a sage and control the power of all living beings. Only then can they become the king of sages on the great path. This kind of opportunity and creation is rare even on the starry ancient path. Now that I've encountered it, how can I give up? As long as I can obtain the power of all living beings, there will be a place for me in the top 10 of the Starry Sky Great Sage list. As he spoke, Lu Xuanji became extremely excited. He took a deep breath and his body glowed. He spread his divine sense again to sense the ancestral 10,000 spirits sacrificial painting on the stone wall. Boom! But in just a moment, Lu Xuanji's body trembled violently as if he was struck by lightning. He flew out violently and coughed up blood. The cultivators nearby were all agitated. Lu Chong, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, frowned and said, You can't force it. Why bother? Shut up. Lu Xuanji roared. He got up again as if he had gone mad. He spread his divine sense and power to sense the painting on the stone wall. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a broken blade that was jade white like snow suddenly tore through the sky, and it slashed down swiftly and violently at an unbelievable speed. At that instant, it seemed as if the 9 heavens had appeared out of thin air. Watch out! At practically the exact same time, Lu Chong, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, shouted. However, he was still a step too late. Lu Xuanji only wanted to obtain the acknowledgement of the power of all living beings, so he'd never imagined that there would be a sudden attack at this moment. Moreover, it was so swift and domineering. He didn't have the time to dodge at all, and he could only rely on the instincts he'd gained from fighting for many years to resist it. Boom! Amidst the earth-shattering rumble, Lu Xuanji's entire body was sent flying. The armor covering his body was crushed and blasted apart. There was a wound on his chest that was so deep that bones could be seen. Blood flowed out like a waterfall. Thump! His figure fell to the ground and let out a muffled groan. He was in an extremely sorry state. Shit! Someone launched a sneak attack. The nearby cultivators reacted as well. Their expressions changed abruptly, and they withdrew their treasures one after another. Killing intent coiled around their bodies, and all of them became vigilant. Which shameless bastard dares to launch a sneak attack on me? Lu Xuanji roared furiously. His face was livid and hideous, and the injuries on his body were recovering at a visible speed. Swoosh! The broken blade flashed as it attacked once more. Right at this moment, Lu Xuanji finally saw his opponent clearly, and he couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. Lin Sun, how could it possibly be you? Before his voice could finish resounding through the air, his entire body was blasted flying once more by the broken blade, and he coughed up blood repeatedly as he'd suffered a heavy injury. Even if he'd made sufficient preparations and resisted with all his might, he was still completely suppressed by Lin Sun's full-force attack. Kill! The nearby cultivators attacked as well, and they didn't dare hesitate at all. At this moment, Lin Sun was like a ferocious gale. His figure glowed as he teleported and attacked explosively, and he deduced his strength to the limit. Rumble. In an instant, deafening rumbling resounded as those cultivators that charged towards Chun Shi were crushed, and their bodies were blasted flying. A few amongst them were even directly crushed on the spot, and their bodies exploded into pieces. This was astounding, and they didn't dare believe their eyes. Even Lu Xuanji couldn't help but gasp. This fellow is actually much stronger than he was on Inverted Mountain. What made Lu Xuanji most uneasy was that. How did Lin Sun come in? The peak of Yulong Mountain had long been guarded by Gu Tsangxin, Tao Jianxing, Kuan Julin, and other strong cultivators, and they'd even set up a peerless killing formation. But Lin Sun had appeared here at this moment. Didn't this mean that Gu Tsangxin and the others' arrangements couldn't stop Lin Sun? At the thought of this, Lu Xuanji's heart trembled. He was the clearest about the layout on the peak of Yulong Mountain, which was powerful enough to kill a sage king, but it couldn't stop Lin Sun. How terrifying was this? Rumble. Without giving Lu Xuanji a chance to think, Lin Sun had already rushed over violently. He was like an ancient demon god descending to the world, his body like a great abyss, and his chi surged like a bull. He was extremely powerful. Each of those cultivators who tried to stop him was also a ruthless character, and their cultivation was no weaker than the great sage realm. But in Lin Sun's hands, they were like chickens and dogs that couldn't withstand a single blow. In just a moment, they were utterly defeated, and blood flowed like a river. Die! Lin Sun's eyes were like cold lightning, locking onto Lu Xuanji. The terrifying power made Lu Xuanji shudder. Lin Sun, do you want to see these people die? Suddenly, Lu Chong, who had been sitting at the foot of the mountain, spoke indifferently, threatening Mi Hongjin, Yi Mo, and the others with their lives. He had always been calm. Lin Sun's charging figure paused. Lu Xuanji, on the other hand, seemed to have seen hope again. He grinned and said, Lu Chong, kill a captive first and show this little bastard. Idiot. A hint of pity appeared in Lin Sun's eyes. He rushed forward without hesitation, as if he didn't care about any threat at all. Lu Xuanji was surprised and caught off guard. Boom! The next moment, he was sent flying again. His body was bathed in blood, and the wounds were shocking. He was almost split in half. One should know that Lu Xuanji was a pure-blood descendant of the Blood Kylan battle clan. Luong, who died in Lin Sun's hands, was far less powerful than him. But in a head-on confrontation, he was still completely crushed by Lin Sun. Lu Chong, why aren't you doing anything? Lu Xuanji panicked completely and roared. Plop! At this moment, a horrifying and bloody scene appeared. Lu Cheng, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly had his head separated from his neck. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Lu Xuanji was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. He died silently just like that. At the same time, Ahu appeared in front of Lu Cheng's headless corpse. She was dressed in a yellow dress and looked like a fairy. She waved her hand gently and said in her heart, "Treasure, come back." In the void, an almost transparent flying dagger flashed into her palm and turned into a mysterious gourd pattern before disappearing. God-slaying gourd. In order to kill Lu Cheng as soon as possible, Ahu once again used this mysterious ancient treasure. However, Lu Xuanji could no longer see any of this. Boom! Just when he was in shock, Lin Sun had already charged over. The broken blade swept across and cut Lu Xuanji in half. Lu Xuanji's death was filled with extreme unwillingness and resentment. Everything happened too quickly. From Lin Sun's attack to Lu Cheng's death, a series of actions were completed in just a few breaths. It was incredibly fast. Whether it was Lin Sun or Ahu, they did not hold back when they attacked. What they wanted was to kill the enemy in one fell swoop. It would be hard for Lu Xuanji and the others to survive if they wanted to. At this point, Lin Sun let out a long sigh. Without even looking at the corpses on the ground, he came to Ahu and asked, "How are they?" Ahu had already started to remove the gray chains on Mi Hongjin, Yi Mo, and the others. They are covered with the power of the secret forbidden spell. Although it won't be life-threatening, it will take some time to get rid of it. Ahu answered casually, "That's good." Lin Sun was relieved. He did not stay idle either. He cleaned up the spoils of war on the battlefield. Seeing that Ahu was still busy, he did not dare to disturb her and came to the stone wall of the mountain. Raising his eyes, Lin Sun looked at the law bell in the ancestral people sacrificial painting on the stone wall. A sense of déjà vu rose in his heart. Was it really the Great Way lawless bell? The 5th chapter is up. Today's explosive update has ended because Old Fish could not hold on any longer. He had caught a cold yesterday, but he would definitely be scolded by many if he said that he had asked for leave yesterday. So, he forced himself to finish the 5th chapter today before daring to say that he was sick. It was not to move anyone, but to let everyone know that he would do his best to do what he had promised. Chapter 1822. Looking at the ancestor and All Souls sacrificial painting on the stone wall, Lin Sun recalled some past events. At the end of the Taoist Lamp Discussion Lantern Festival in Shihing Territory, a psychic king herb appeared with the temperament of an old rascal. But it was also because of this psychic king herb that Lin Sun learned something about the Great Way lawless bell. This psychic king herb once said, "The Great Way lawless bell was forged by sages in ancient times with their whole life's efforts. When the bell rings, it represents the gathering of the power of all living beings, which is enough to change the world and make ghosts and gods retreat. It's so wonderful that whoever can control, it can control the power of all living beings." It also said, "The Great Way lawless bell represents the power of all living beings. When sages successfully refined it, they suffered unprecedented punishment because it violated the taboo. Even if they could get it, they couldn't use it in a short time. If you want to use this treasure, you need the power of all living beings. The power of all living beings is related to the wish of all living beings. Only the mighty who succeed in the divine path of pilgrimage can collect it." At that time, Lin Sun clearly remembered that it was said that when ancient sages preached to the world and enlightened all living beings, they would naturally get the faith of all living beings, which then condensed into a mysterious power, the wish power. Just like the statues and temples in the secular world, which were worshipped by mortals all year round, there would naturally be a solemn and frightening atmosphere. That kind of atmosphere was the most superficial wish power. On the other hand, the so-called wish energy of cultivators was different. It represented a grand vision of cultivating the Tao, and every single true sage would establish their own grand aspiration towards the grand Tao. For this reason, some sages chose to enter the secular world to enlighten all living beings and carry forward their great wish. If they got the faith and recognition of all living beings, they could get a steady stream of wish power. Similarly, some sages chose to enter the secular world to verify their own vision with all the Tao in the world. When they opened up a new way of cultivation or created a new Tao, they could also get the wish power. This kind of wish power was also called the wish power of the Great Way. Whether entering the secular world or coming out of the secular world, if one wanted to become a sage from a sage, it was destined to be inseparable from the wish power. Lin Sun still remembered that in the mulberry forest of the bloodthirsty battlefield, the mysterious golden cicada had made a great wish that was enough to shock the world and shock the ages. He hoped that one day, all living beings in the world could become saints. This was also a great ambition of the great Tao. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but think of the many attempts Lu Xuanji had made when facing this stone wall just now. Lu Xuanji was certain that the ancestral multitude, spirit, sacrificial painting contained the power of all living beings. As long as he could control it, he would be able to become a true sage during the divine Tao consecration and not just a saint. The difference between sage and sage was like the difference between heaven and earth. Only a person at the great saint realm who succeeded in attaining the Zen was able to be called a sage. They were able to control the energy of all living beings, and in the future, they were able to become a king of sages on the path towards the Tao. For this reason, Lu Xuanji had tried many times, but he had failed in the end. At this time, recalling some of the past events and comparing it with Lu Xuanji's words, Lin Sun felt more and more that the Tao bell in the all-spirit sacrificial painting was very likely to be the Great Way lawless bell. Only by attaining the Zen in the divine Tao can one become a sage. The word sage distinguishes one from other sages in the world. As the saying goes, when one sees a virtuous person, one must think alike. It represents the height of one's cultivation, and also a power that surpasses that of a sage. Lin Sun was lost in thought. He was already at the consummation of the great saint realm, so he naturally knew the difference between a sage and a sage, because only a sage could become a king of sages on the path towards the Tao. As for a sage, he might be able to advance to the sage king realm, but he was destined to have no fate with the path towards the Tao. Originally, according to Lin Sun's plan, he would only consider attaining the Zen as a sage when he stepped into the consummation of the great saint realm. But now, such an opportunity appeared in front of him. Finally, Lin Sun took a deep breath and decided to give it a try. Clatter, his divine sense spread out and poured into the all-spirits sacrificial painting on the stone wall. Suddenly, his body and mind trembled, and a vigorous, ancient bell seemed to ring in his mind. In a trance, he seemed to see a Tao bell floating in the ancient times. It was so large that it was immeasurable, and its whole body was covered with dense, ancient patterns. As it shook, the bell rang through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Natural disasters, calamities, evil spirits, and sufferings in the world all collapsed and vanished in the sound of the bell. Countless creatures who had suffered all kinds of disasters were grateful. They prostrated on the ground and worshipped devoutly. Wisps of the wishes of all living beings were produced, like the incense of faith, and were constantly absorbed by the Tao bell. Boom! Soon, these images dissipated, leaving only a Tao bell floating in the river of time, ringing with an ancient and vast sound. The bell represented all living beings. The ringing of the bell represented the will of all living beings. The power generated could reverse the universe and eliminate disasters. At the same time, various understandings emerged in Lin Sun's mind. A sage represented a kind of cultivation realm, enlightening all living beings with one's own strength, and those who gained the recognition and faith of all living beings could control the power of all living beings. Only in this way could one be called a sage. Similarly, using one's own great wish to verify with the heavens, opening up a new path for future generations, and creating new Taoism One could control the wish of the Great Way and also be called a sage. In short, there were two ways to become a sage. One was to control the wish of all living beings, and the other was to control the wish of the Great Way. Since I started my cultivation, I've been pursuing an unprecedented path in the heavens. It's equivalent to opening up a new path for future generations. Lin Sun's black eyes glowed with wisdom. Creating my own method in the sage realm is also unprecedented. It's equivalent to creating a new Taoism for future generations. When I reach the consummation of the great sage realm, I can control the wish of the Great Way and become a sage. Having figured this out, Lin Sun looked at the picture of ancestors and all spirits worshipping ceremony again. His mind was clear and empty, without any desire or desire. For Lu Xuanji, this stone inscription contained the power of all living beings, which could be called the supreme creation. But in Lin Sun's eyes, it was completely indifferent. He had never preached to the world or enlightened all living beings, so he naturally didn't care about gaining the recognition and faith of all living beings. In other words, Lin Sun didn't have the idea of representing all living beings at all, so he naturally wouldn't covet the wish of all living beings. At this moment, the only thing that made Lin Sun curious was why the pattern of the Great Way infinite bell appeared in one of the 9 secrets of Kunlun. Could it be that this bell came from the Kunlun ruins? While Lin Sun was thinking, a voice suddenly sounded in his heart. "My little friend, why don't you use the Great Way infinite bottle to take away the power of all living beings?" The voice was vigorous and resounding like a bell. "Who?" Lin Sun was shocked, and then the image of a bronze Tao bell naturally appeared in his mind. It was ancient and vigorous, full of mysterious and supreme aura. "Don't be surprised, my little friend. There are 9 treasures hidden in the 9 secrets of Kunlun, all of which were born in the refining mother furnace. A long time ago, these 9 treasures were taken away by 9 destined people one by one, and I am a wisp of the will of the Great Way infinite bell." In his mind, the melodious sound of the bell turned into a language and was heard by Lin Sun. He was shocked. It was really the Great Way infinite bell. Lin Sun couldn't help saying in his heart, "The refining mother furnace? Is it the refining mother furnace that turned into the refining place?" He still clearly remembered that he'd obtained a black piece of copper on the inverted mountain in the treasure refinement grounds, and he'd seen some shocking scenes from it. For example, this copper block was left by a refining mother furnace. In the beginning, 9 Emperor Dao treasures were born from the artifact refining cauldron. The 9 Emperor Dao treasures were a godly sword, a battle spear, a copper lamp, a battle flag, a Dao seal, a jade bottle, a set of armor, a jade plate, and a godly saber. Yes, the voice of the will left behind by the great Dao lawless bell resounded. The refinement source cauldron forged the 9 Emperor weapons to defend Kunlun, but because of this, it violated a taboo and encountered an unprecedented great calamity, causing the refinement source cauldron to completely dissipate. And these 9 Emperor weapons were hidden in the 9 secrets. In the following years, they were taken away by destined people one by one. Lin Sun understood completely now. The refining place was formed after the refining mother furnace was disintegrated, and the 9 Emperor weapons that had been refined by the refining mother furnace were hidden in the 9 secrets of Kunlun from then on. Unfortunately, in the past years, people had come to take away these Emperor weapons one by one. I feel the breath of the Great Way infinite bottle on you. This thing is one of the 9 Emperor weapons. It was originally hidden in the Infinite Lake, one of the 9 secrets of Kunlun. Later, it was taken away by a successor of Mountain Heart Mountain named Li Jui. The successor of Mountain Heart Mountain, Li Jui. Lin Sun was stunned. Wasn't this one of his senior brothers? Li Jui is a very interesting person. He is generous and unrestrained. When he left, I went to the ancient desolation realm with him with the power of the dark parasol divine tree. The voice of the Great Way infinite bell sounded again. Later, Li Jui and his junior brothers wanted to go to the starry sky to prove their Tao, so they left the ancient desolation realm. Before he left, Li Jui left the great Tao immeasurable bottle on the Azure Parasol Mountain. He said that one day, an inheritor of the Fengsuan Mountain would come here, and that the great Tao immeasurable bottle would be a greeting gift for his junior apprentice brother. Lin Sun was completely stunned. He remembered that the Tao Discussion Lantern show was held on the dark Parasol Mountain. He remembered that the Great Way Infinite bottle was obtained in the second test of the Tao Discussion Lantern show. At the end of the test, there was a group of men and women who left imprints to bid farewell to him and called him junior brother. Lin Sun clearly remembered that there was once a spirited and handsome young man called Senior Brother Li who once said, "I'm not afraid of you. Anyone who enters this sect, regardless of age, is my brother or sister. Junior brother, one day, we will meet on the Great Path. Take care." This chapter contains a lot of information. The Tao Discussion Lantern show, the Great Way Infinite bottle, the Great Way Infinite bell, and Li Jui all appeared when Lin Sun first entered the West Hung territory of the Ancient Desolation. The specific content is in chapters 857 to 877 and 923 to 924. If you're interested, you can read them again. Chapter 1823, Azure Parasol Mountain, Li Jui, Great Tao, Boundless Bottle, Great Tao, Lawless Bell. Only now did Lin Sun suddenly realize that the fortuitous encounter he obtained at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival back then was not a coincidence at all. It was because Li Jui was the successor of Fengsuan Mountain. The Great Tao, Boundless Bottle he left behind was meant for him, his junior brother. On the other hand, the Great Tao, Boundless Bottle was an imperial weapon born in the Kunlun ruins. It was brought out by Senior Brother Li Jui. When did this happen? Lin Sun asked in his heart. A long time ago, 100,000 years ago. I'm not sure either. The wisp of will from the Great Tao, Boundless Bell spoke. So it's been so long. Lin Sun was in a daze. After that, he realized a problem. I remember that there wasn't a Tao bell amongst the 9 imperial weapons that were born within the furnace. Who are you? The voice resounded in Lin Sun's heart. I'm the Great Tao, Boundless Bell. Before the 9 imperial weapons were born, I already existed in the Kunlun ruins. Do you know the 3 forbidden grounds? Lin Sun nodded. He had heard Ahum mention it before. The Great Tao, Boundless Bottle was born in one of the 3 forbidden grounds, the Zen Conferral Platform, and I was born in one of the 3 forbidden grounds, the Tao Suppression Cliff. The voice sounded again. The place where you're standing right now was originally buried with the Great Tao, Boundless Bottle. Back then, Li Jui took this treasure away from here. Only then did Lin Sun understand. And then he frowned. Didn't they say that the Great Tao Boundless Bell was forged by a group of sages using their entire lives? Why was it born in the Tao Suppression Cliff? He had heard from Ahu that the Tao Suppression Cliff was one of the 3 forbidden grounds of the Kunlun ruins. It suppressed the quintessence energy of all Taos in the world. The voice sounded again. That's right. Those sages had once come to the Kunlun ruins. They were the first batch of sages during the primordial times. They once entered the Tao Suppression Cliff together with the intention of borrowing the quintessence energy of all Taos in the world to refine the number 1 holy weapon in the primordial times. However, they greatly underestimated the dangers of the Tao Suppression Cliff. In the end, they even sacrificed their lives for it. However, even though they died, they still succeeded in the end. After countless years of nurturing by the source energy of the myriad Taos, my main body, the Great Tao Lawless Bell, was born. After hearing this, Lin Sun realized that this was the truth. The Great Tao Lawless Bell was indeed the crystallization of a group of sages' efforts. However, because of this treasure the sages paid with their lives, Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious. What are the names of the other 8 sovereign weapons except for the immeasurable Great Way bottle? The voice replied, the other 8 monarch weapons are prefixed with the word Great Tao. They are lifeless seal, formless sword, void plate, directionless flag, skyless spear, lawless sword, flawless armor, and guiltless lamp. Hearing the words Great Doctrine Lamp, Lin's heart skipped a beat. Great Doctrine Lamp? When he was in the forbidden land of Styx, Lin Sun once crossed a blood sea and was given a lamp of no blame by a skeleton boatman. This lamp was bronze in color and emitted dim and illusory light. It could guide the souls of the strong who were lost in the myriad Taos. In the mulberry forest, Lin Sun used this lamp to gain the followers of a group of horrible old monsters. Later, the young man with golden cicada used this lamp to guide these horrible old monsters one by one, so that they could get some kind of relief. Before these horrible old monsters left, they gave Lin Sun a token one by one. For example, an old ancestor from the Yu clan, who was a good friend of the innumerable Tribulation Emperor, gave Lin Sun a token with the word Yu before he left. For example, a white-bone immortal phoenix gave Lin Sun a piece of real feather before he left. In addition, there was also a 7-inch cyan scabbard from the Giant K clan, a white-bone giant with a broken sword on his back. There was also the fire leaf from the scorched tree, whose original body was the Tao tree of fire. There was the sapphire bell from the white-bone fox, whose original body was the 9-aperture divine fox. There was the tusk from the white-boned serpent, whose original body was the dark-winged heavenly snake. There was the white tortoise shell from the white-bone old turtle, whose original body was the great void dragon turtle. These tokens were still in Lin Sun's hands. At the end of the day, the reason why he had such an opportunity was because of the great Tao no blame lamp. However, Lin Sun never expected that the great Tao no blame lamp would be one of the 9 emperor weapons in the Kunlun ruins. When he said this, the voice immediately said, "That's right, the great Tao no blame lamp is one of the 9 emperor weapons." After getting a definite answer, Lin Sun had a feeling that it was preordained in the dark. The great Tao immeasurable bottle and the great Tao no blame lamp were actually one of the 9 emperor weapons of Kunlun. Who would have thought that? Young friend, after you leave the Kunlun ruins in the future, if you meet experts who hold other 9 emperor weapons of Kunlun, you will naturally have a strange reaction, the voice reminded. Similarly, you will be sensed by the other party immediately. It's hard to say whether it's a blessing or a curse. Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat, now that he had 2 treasures of the 9 emperor weapons in his hands. Once he was discovered by other experts who possessed treasures of the 9 emperor weapons, it was indeed hard to predict whether it would be a blessing or a curse. Young friend, my power is rapidly depleting. I don't have much time. I just want to tell you that among the 9 emperor weapons, only the great Tao immeasurable bottle can bear the power of living beings here. The voice sounded again. This power of living beings is the accumulation of those sages over countless years. I hope you can inherit it and protect the crystallization of those sages' efforts. One day, you can also rely on this power of living beings to become a sage. You can even use this power to control my body. At this point, the voice stopped abruptly and disappeared completely. Then, boom, the ancestral 10,000 spirits sacrificial painting on the stone wall suddenly glowed and turned into a majestic torrent of power that was as vast as the sea, gushing out. This was the power of living beings. It was the supreme creation that Lu Xuanji had tried his best to obtain. Lin Sun recalled the words left behind by the great Tao immeasurable bell and took out the great Tao immeasurable bottle without hesitation. The great Tao immeasurable bottle emanated a strange fluctuation, and the vast and majestic power of living beings transformed into a torrent that surged into the bottle without end. It was like a crystalline and vast waterfall that surged into the bottle. After a long time, all the power of living beings was finally completely collected. On the other hand, the ancestral 10,000 spirits sacrificial painting on the stone wall had completely vanished. Lin Sun weighed the great Tao immeasurable bottle in his palm and didn't notice anything unusual. But when his divine sense surged into it, he noticed a thick and majestic aura of the power of living beings suffusing it. Huff, Lin Sun took a few deep breaths and tried hard to calm himself down. He was silently arranging his thoughts. The ancestral 10,000 spirits sacrificial painting unexpectedly allowed him to know many secrets. Firstly, the origins of the source furnace and the great Tao immeasurable bell. The former was born on the Ascension platform, one of the three great forbidden areas, and the latter was born on the Tao suppression cliff. Secondly, the secrets of the 9 emperor weapons, including the great Tao immeasurable bottle and the great Tao lamp, were born in the source furnace. Thirdly, some past events related to Li Jui of Mount Innerheart, such as the fortuitous encounter at the Tao Discussion Lantern meeting on Dark Parasol Divine Mountain. Fourthly, it was related to the power of living beings, and it was related to the difference between saints and sages. In short, this incident allowed Lin Sun to completely understand some things and figure out some past events. Moreover, he'd obtained the power of living beings, and it could be said to be a huge gain. At the same time, some doubts surged into Lin Sun's mind. In the Peach Garden's secret realm, the fortuitous encounter on the Immortality Peach Tree was related to the arrogant senior brother of Mount Innerheart. In one of the 9 secrets of Mount Yulong, the great Tao immeasurable bottle was related to Li Jui, who was also a descendant of Mount Innerheart. Before he came to Kunlun ruins, Ahu had given him a horsetail whisk, and it was related to a fortuitous encounter of Mount Innerheart. Lin Sun didn't forget that there was a Taoism left by the master of Mount Innerheart in his great Tao Endless Tower. The first sentence of the hymn was, stepping on the starry Han's shoes, strolling up Kunlun, a series of details connected together, and Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder how many secrets related to Mount Innerheart were hidden in the Kunlun ruins. Brother Lin. Suddenly, a voice woke Lin Sun up from his thoughts. He looked up and saw that Mi Hongjin, Yi Mo, Qi Ling Xiao, and the others had all been freed from their chains, and they had regained consciousness. Everyone's faces were filled with joy and gratitude after surviving a disaster. Obviously, I had already told them about Lin Sun's rescue. Everyone long time no see. Lin Sun walked over with a smile. It was undoubtedly a joyous occasion for friends to meet. Lin Sun released the young golden-winged Rock King and Yuan Fatian, whom he'd saved earlier. Everyone gathered together and sighed with emotion. In the end, Lin Sun decided to temporarily settle Mi Hongjin and the others here to recuperate. They were severely injured, and if they left now, they would only encounter more dangers. Only those with the flying immortal token could enter this area of the 9 secrets. This also eliminated the possibility of others breaking into this place, making it extremely safe. Naturally, no one had any objections. After thinking about it, Lin Sun asked Little Silver, Little Tian, Old Toad, Alu, and the Big Blackbird to stay, and told them to start preparing to break through to the Great Saint Realm. Little Silver and the others had each obtained a Peach of Immortality. With the magical effect of the Peach of Immortality, it was enough to support their path of breaking through. Only then did Lin Sun feel much more relaxed. The Kunlun ruins was full of dangers, and he couldn't help but worry. If he took Little Silver and the others with him in the future, they would definitely be affected if something happened to him. Moreover, it was time for Little Silver and the others to break through, so they couldn't be disturbed. It was the safest way to let them stay here and cultivate quietly. After making these arrangements, Lin Sun decided to leave. He had many doubts in his mind, and he wanted to explore the Kunlun ruins further. Chapter 1824. Fixed a bug. One of the 9 emperor weapons, Lawless Sword, should be Lawless Saber. Change a person's name. Li Jui, the successor of Fengsuan Mountain, was mistaken for riding on the popularity of the protagonist of a certain book. I really didn't think of this, and it's not that boring. To avoid misunderstandings, changed it to Li Xianwei. Here's the main text. Lin Sun was indeed eager to learn more about the Kunlun ruins. For example, he wanted to see if the opportunity related to the horsetail whisk had anything to do with Fengsuan Mountain. For example, he wanted to take a look at the pilgrimage platform, which was regarded as one of the 3 forbidden areas. After all, the source furnace of treasure refining was born there. And Lin Sun had a relic of the source furnace of treasure refining in his hands. Wait for my return, then I'll drink with you all. Lin Sun smiled, cupped his hands, bid farewell to everyone, and left with Ahu. Watching him disappear, Mi Hongjin couldn't help but sigh. Every time I see this guy, I feel like it's getting harder and harder to reach. The others were also emotional. The talents in the same era as Lin Sun would undoubtedly be gloomy, even helpless and sad. Because no matter how amazing and outstanding you were, Lin Sun could always surpass you in an incomprehensible way until you had no choice but to bow your head. Yin Qingbai, the leader of the younger generation in the ancient Desolation region, was like that, and so were the leaders of the younger generation in the 9 regions. Would it be the same on the starry sky, ancient path in the future? How fortunate it is to be friends with him. How sad it is to be enemies with him. Yimo sighed. People like Lin Sun were like the sun in the sky. Even if there were times when dark clouds obscured its light, the dark clouds would eventually disperse. Those who envied him were helpless, unable to catch up. Those who hated him were either dead or on the way to death. Little Silver, Little Tian, Old Toad, Alu, and the others listened without saying anything, but their hearts were filled with happiness. This feeling was really wonderful. Only the big black bird muttered, "That's because I didn't show my power." What do you know? A bunch of fools who can't see gold inlaid with jade, but everyone ignored it. They were all familiar with this thieving bird's boastful nature, so they couldn't be bothered to pay it any attention. This made the big blackbird feel very embarrassed, and it felt melancholy like a blind man who didn't recognize the cloud-soaring wood. At the peak of Mount Yulong, Lin Sun, and who walked out of the misty area one after another. Ahu asked in surprise, "You're going to look for opportunities related to this horsetail whisk?" "Yes. Didn't you say that this strand of horsetail whisk is related to some secrets of Mount Innerheart's orthodoxy? I want to take this opportunity to take a look." Lin Sun nodded, and images emerged in his mind. There was that arrogant figure, the Shinkong Ghost King, senior brother Xue, whom he had never met before, and Li Xianwei, who had left the great Tao immeasurable bottle to him. These were all his senior brothers. It won't be easy to find him. A hint of apology could be heard in Ahu's voice. When I obtained this item, I was only certain that it had flowed out of the Kunlun ruins a long time ago and was related to Mount Fongsuan's orthodoxy. As for where the opportunities related to it are hidden, I'm not sure either. It's fine. Let's leave it to fate. Lin Sun smiled and looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. The great Tao in this world can be pursued by force as long as you're determined to. However, the opportunities in this world can only be left to fate. Brother Lin, if you're going to the pilgrimage platform, I can help you. Meng Yi of the Cheongqi Battle Clan has a pilgrimage steel in his hand. I also have something that can resolve some of the dangers we will encounter on the way to the pilgrimage platform. Ahu gazed at Lin Sun with her crystal-clear eyes. Lin Sun recalled that Meng Yi had invited him to the pilgrimage platform. It was about time, he said in a low voice. Ahu, as one of the 3 forbidden areas of the Kunlun ruins, the pilgrimage platform is filled with extraordinary dangers. Do you think it's necessary for us to take this risk? Personally, I suggest that it's best to go there once. Ahu thought about it and said, "Rumor has it that the pilgrimage platform hides the secret of becoming an emperor or ancestor. However, there are still different opinions on whether this secret exists or not. However, according to what I know, there's an opportunity related to the Saint Ascension ceremony at the location of the Zen Ascension stage. Moreover, many people have obtained it in the past." Lin Sun said in surprise, "There's such a thing." "That's right. As long as you can set foot on the mysterious pilgrimage platform, you can seek an opportunity to become a sage." Ahu said swiftly, "However, in the boundless years of the past, very few experts have been able to enter the Zen Ascension platform alive. It's too dangerous and terrifying, causing most cultivators to not dare take even half a step forward as they're deeply afraid of losing their lives there. Only the descendants of the top forces like the 6 Tao courts and the 10 battle clans have the resources to consider entering the pilgrimage platform. That's because each of their orthodoxies has some secrets and methods related to the pilgrimage platform. It's enough to prevent them from losing their lives while searching for opportunities. For example, Meng Yi has the pilgrimage tablet." Lin Sun fell silent for a moment and said, "Then let's go." While Lin Sun and Ah were planning to go to the pilgrimage platform, the Kunlun ruins were also surging. In a secret realm, the chaotic qi roared, the law intertwined, and the sound of scriptures rang out, as if an ancient Tao ancestor was preaching. Now, I only need an opportunity to enter the pilgrimage platform. When Qingxue stood up and walked out of the cave residence. Her clothes were whiter than snow, tied at her waist with a golden ribbon. Her hair fell like a waterfall, and her face was as beautiful as a fairy. As she walked, wisps of Taoist light flowed around her, making her figure more ethereal and illusory. There was a fruit of Tao in this secret realm, which was related to the true meaning of the divine Tao. Now, she had completely refined it and integrated it into her own Tao. Senior Sister Qingxue, there was news yesterday that Kunjiu, the descendant of the primitive Taoist court, died. Outside the cave residence, a descendant of the Panwu Taoist court had been waiting for a long time. Seeing when Qingxue coming out, he hurriedly reported, "Dead? What happened?" When Qingxue was stunned. Yesterday, there was a shocking, bloody battle at the top of Yulong Mountain. As the descendant of the Panwu Taoist court explained, when Qingxue also understood the truth of the matter, and her clear eyes slightly narrowed. Lin Sun from the ancient Desolation realm killed hundreds of descendants of major forces, including Kunjiu, Gu Zongxin, and Tao Jinxing. The descendant of the Panwu Taoist court said with anger and jealousy, "Senior Sister Qingxue, now the outside world is saying that Lin Sun is a demon god. He is so arrogant." One Qingxue was silent for a moment and said, "Kunjiu is the younger brother of Kuan Xinghe after all. I will avenge him." The other descendants of the Panwu Taoist court could not help but be shocked and said, "Senior Sister Qingxue, this person is extremely not to be trifled with. Now many descendants of major forces treat you as a formidable enemy and dare not provoke you easily." When Qingxue glanced at these people and did not answer directly. Instead, she said, "In a few years, the Starry Sky Great Saints list will be re-ranked. At that time, there will be a place for me in the top 10. Saying this, she floated away. Top 10 of the Starry Sky Great Saints list? The descendants of the Panwu Taoist court froze and were all shocked. Only now did they realize that when Qingxue was actually so powerful. Meteorite Ridge, one of the 9 secrets of Kunlun ruins. At the bottom of a huge ravine, this was a dangerous place that ordinary people could not reach, but there was someone in seclusion here. With a shocking roar, a man stood up. When he opened and closed his eyes, it was as if there were double pupils reflected in them. They shot out beams of light, splitting the void and making the world collapse. That gaze was too terrifying and dazzling. As he breathed, the aura around him spread out, causing the mountains and valleys to tremble and the sky to darken. Billowing demonic qi covered his body, making him look like a peerless demon god. After a long time, all the strange phenomena calmed down. The figure's aura was restrained, and his snow-white hair fluttered in the wind, revealing a sickly pale, handsome face. Hua Xingli, one of the core descendants of the demon court, an extremely powerful figure who did things without fear and whose hands were stained with blood. Congratulations, young master, on your great achievement. Some descendants of the demon court rushed over and saluted in unison, looking respectful and humble. Xue Qingyi was among them. This is the power of good fortune. In a short 7 days, I have been reborn and have reached a perfect stage on the road of sainthood. Hua Xingli sighed with emotion and then asked, "Did anything big happen these days?" "Yes." Xue Qingyi stood up immediately and told him about the bloody battle on Mount Yulong. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Young master, you should have seen Lin Sun's true colors now. He is a cruel killer. If he is allowed to live, he will definitely be a great disaster." Hua Xingli glanced at Xue Qingyi and said, "I know exactly what you're thinking. It's not impossible for you to borrow my power to deal with Lin Sun, but from now on, you'd better not play tricks in front of me." His words were calm, but Xue Qingyi was already covered in cold sweat, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Hua Xingli withdrew his gaze and walked away. "Let's go." It's time to go to the pilgrimage platform. If I'm not wrong, when Qing Xue, Ming, Yi, Zhuan Yuheng. I'm afraid these guys have already set their eyes on the pilgrimage platform. His figure gradually faded away, and his voice gradually faded away. In the Kunlun ruins, in a secret realm derived from a stamen, Sha Luqing, who was immersed in cultivation, opened his eyes. His brown pupils shone with a mysterious luster. I've finally mastered the strange space shift. Lin Sun, the next time we meet, I will give you my death as a gift. Killing intent flashed in Sha Luqing's eyes. His body wriggled like an earthworm, turning into wisps of gray smoke and disappearing. Although the Kunlun realm remnant was filled with countless dangers, it also contained countless secret realms and fortuitous encounters. Not only Lin Sun, but other powerful figures who entered the Kunlun ruins also had their own opportunities and gains during this period of time, such as when Qing Xue, Hua Xingli, and so on. Chapter 1825. Boom! In the Kunlun ruins, a golden figure rushed out from under an ancient Taoist temple that had collapsed. He stretched his body and became tens of thousands of meters tall. When he breathed, it was like wind and thunder surging under the sky. His body was pure golden, and his blood and chi surged into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds in all directions. He stood there like a golden god, overlooking the sky. Who is it? The voice of the golden figure was like a thunderclap. He stretched out his hand and grabbed a figure thousands of meters away like a small bug. I'm Shan Feng, the successor of the primitive Taoist court. Nice to meet you. It was a handsome man in a jade robe. But at this time, his face was pale, full of fear, and his body was trembling. Why are you hiding here? The golden figure said coldly. Senior brother Kuan Julin was killed. I came to ask for help from you. Shan Feng said hurriedly. The golden figure frowned and threw Shan Feng away. Then he said, Tell me, who killed him? Lin Sun. I see. The golden figure nodded. His body, which was tens of thousands of meters tall, suddenly turned into a stream of light and broke through the void. Shan Feng breathed a sigh of relief, as if he had survived a disaster. Su Ling Kuan. He was the core descendant of the Su family, a peerless demon saint ranked 13th on the great sage list of Starry Sky. In the face of such a terrifying figure, even as the successor of the primitive Taoist court, Shan Feng did not dare to show any disrespect. The ancestors of the Kuan family and the Su family were two of the 7 demonic emperors in ancient times. The descendants of the two families were very close. Shan Feng murmured, Now it seems that it's true. I just don't know how such a terrifying demon saint like Su Ling Kuan will deal with Lin Sun. Will the heretic go to the pilgrimage platform in a swamp that was filled with danger? A black-clothed monk was walking slowly. Every single step he took would cause a lotus platform to form and emanate a jet-black Buddhist glow. On the top of his head, there was a bewitching image of a black lotus. In the Battle of Mount Yulong, the power this heretic displayed has clearly far surpassed what it was before. If he's allowed to continue living, he'll definitely transform into something even more terrifying. The black-clothed monk's gaze was calm, and he pondered deeply for a long time before he made a decision. We can't wait any longer. Pa. Lin Sun crushed the token given by Meng Yi. Accompanied by a strange fluctuation, a door appeared in the void. Then, the handsome and elegant Meng Yi, the successor of the 4 Stars Dao sect, Ji Qian, and Jiang Heng walked out one after another. Brother Lin, I've been waiting for you, Meng Yi said with a smile, looking quite happy. Lin Sun also said with a smile, I was delayed because of some things. Please forgive me. Meng Yi looked like he understood and said, I heard that there was a shocking, bloody battle at Mount Imperial Dragon. Lin Sun fought the crowd alone and killed all his enemies. This matter has caused a huge sensation in the Kunlun ruins. His voice was filled with admiration. Lin Sun smiled and did not say anything. He noticed that whether it was Ji Qian or Jiang Heng, their attitudes towards him had clearly changed. There was less hostility and more apprehension. However, Lin Sun also noticed that in just over 10 days, Jiang Hung had broken through and set foot on the peak of the Great Saint Realm. Even Ji Qian's aura had become much stronger than before. As for Meng Yi, he still looked as gentle and humble as before, but Lin Sun could feel that his cultivation should have improved a lot. His manners, aura, and charm all had a kind of potential transformation. Obviously, Meng Yi, Ji Qian, and Jiang Hung must have obtained a lot of opportunities during this period of time. Brother Lin, you must be ready. Let's not delay. How about we go to the pilgrimage platform now? After a moment of small talk, Meng Yi made a decision. All right. Lin Sun and Ahu looked at each other and agreed. Meng Yi led the way, and the group began to move. On the way, Meng Yi transmitted his voice. According to the news I've received, there are many powerful people who have also set their eyes on the pilgrimage platform, and many of them have already taken action a few days ago. For example, Zhuan Yuheng. This guy actually came to the Kunlun ruins. If he hadn't suddenly appeared in a secret realm 3 days ago and killed dozens of cultivators, no one would have thought that he would come. Zhuan Yu. It was an extremely ancient surname of the Emperor clan, and this Zhuan Yuheng was a peerless figure from this clan. He was cruel and unyielding, and ranked 10th on the Starry Sky Great Saint list. As everyone knew, those who ranked in the top 100 of the Starry Sky Great Saint list could be called the top great saint in the world. Those who could rank in the top 50 could be called giants in the Great Saint realm. And the top 10, every one of them could be called a rare leader of the Great Saint realm. They were supreme among their peers, like the blazing suns on the ancient road of the Starry Sky. Zhuan Yuheng was such a figure. Meng Yi mentioned this person as soon as he spoke. It could be seen that he was also quite afraid and vigilant of this person. Knowing this, Lin Sun felt that this was normal, because during this period of time, although he had killed many people on the Starry Sky Great Saint list, their rankings could only be considered ordinary. The most powerful Gu Zongxin was barely ranked in the top 50. Originally, Lin Sun was still wondering why the top 10 figures on the Starry Sky Great Saint list had not appeared, but now he understood. For example, Zhuan Yuheng had probably appeared long ago, but no one had noticed him before. There's another situation. I heard that some of the top 10 figures on the Starry Sky Great Saint list have already broken through and entered the ranks of the Saint King. Ahu quickly transmitted his voice to Lin Sun. Some are in closed-door cultivation to prepare for breaking through. If it's not necessary, no one will go out to travel. Speaking of this, Ahu specially reminded, in addition, don't underestimate some people who are not on the Starry Sky Great Saint list. The ancient road of the Starry Sky is vast and boundless, and there are countless heroes in the world. A list can't include all the peerless figures in the world. For example, none of the descendants of the 3 giants of the Dark World are on the Starry Sky Great Saint list. But you've also seen that Sha Liuqing's combat power is extremely mysterious and powerful. Lin Sun nodded. Ahu suddenly chuckled and said, for example, Brother Lin, who would dare to believe that you were so powerful before? You've killed many experts on the Starry Sky Great Sage Board, and in this world, there will never be a lack of powerful people like you, Brother Lin. At this time, Meng Yi spoke again. Brother Lin, in addition to Zhuan Yuheng, you also need to be wary of Su Lingkuan. He is a descendant of the Su family of the Emperor family. If he knows that you killed Kuan Julin, he will definitely come to you for revenge. Then, he told Lin about the relationship between the Emperor family of Kuan and the Emperor family of Su. Lin Sun was not surprised by this, but he was curious about the term 7 demonic emperors of ancient times. Soon, Ahu explained to Lin Sun, the 7 demonic emperors of ancient times were the strongest 7 demonic emperors of the ancient times. Their descendants are regarded as the descendants of the 7 demonic emperors. For example, the ancestor of the emperor family of Kuan was one of the 7 demonic emperors of ancient times, the Nirvana Kuan demonic emperor. He once tore the sky apart with his bare hands and swallowed 13 worlds in one gulp. And the ancestor of the emperor family of Su was one of the 7 demonic emperors of ancient times, the Xianying demonic emperor. His true form was the great evil Ing Zhao of the primordial era, and his combat strength was equally ferocious, no weaker than the Nirvana Kuan demonic emperor. Today, the clans of the 7 demonic emperors of ancient times are all colossal existences on the starry sky ancient path. Some clans may be slightly weaker, but their ancient heritage is not weaker than the 10 war clans and the 6 Dao courts. The group chatted as they walked, allowing Lin Sun to further understand some information on the starry sky ancient path. Only then did he realize that the so-called emperor family actually had so many things to pay attention to. 6 hours later, Lin Sun and his group floated to the top of a volcano that was spewing blazing lava. There was an ancient 5-colored altar there, mottled and weathered, as if it had existed for an eternity. It gave off a heavy feeling of the accumulation of time. Through this altar, we can enter the forbidden world where the pilgrimage platform is located. However, this journey is destined to be extremely dangerous, so everyone must be cautious and vigilant. As Meng Yi spoke, he led the group onto the 5-colored altar. Off! With a wave of his sleeve, a sapphire bottle flew out, and the mouth of the bottle spewed out a torrent of chaotic qi, which surged into the altar. Not long after, the altar suddenly lit up, and an earth-shattering wave was generated. When everything returned to normal, Lin Sun and his group were no longer on the 5-colored altar. The heretic has indeed appeared. Far away from the volcano, a black-robed monk walked out of the void. He held a withered wooden staff in his right hand and a black alms bowl in his left. Sha Luqing, why haven't you come out to meet us at this time? The black-robed monk suddenly looked into the distance. Humph, the oracle emissary of the Divine Sunshine sect, is not the same as the adversity traveler of the Hidden Land realm. A low and feminine voice sounded, and wisps of gray mist condensed from the void and evolved into a vague black shadow. It was Sha Luqing. The black-robed monk said disapprovingly, "May I ask what is his rank and bounty on your holy punishment list?" Sha Luqing asked in reply, "What about the Hidden Land realm? Why do you regard him as a heretic?" The black-robed monk said indifferently, "He stole an inheritance of the Hidden Land realm and took away a forbidden treasure that he shouldn't have taken. Such a heretic cannot be tolerated by God if he is not eradicated." Sha Luqing said casually, "Then I might as well tell you that he is just a small target. His rank on the holy punishment list is at the bottom level, and his bounty is not high, just 30 Dawei precious crystals." The black-robed monk was stunned. He didn't expect that Lin Sun's rank on the holy punishment list would be so low, and his bounty was also so low. This was completely out of his expectation. In any case, with the combat power and foundation that Lin Sun had shown, he shouldn't be treated like this. Chapter 1826. The monk in black felt that it was ridiculous. Lin Sun was a peerless, ruthless person who had killed Yin Chunjun, Luong, Gu Songxin, Tao Jianxing, and Kuan Julin. He was a heaven-defying character who could obtain the Great Dao chapter and retreat safely in the Battle of the Inverted Mountain. He killed all his enemies on Mount Yulong, yet he was just a nobody in the eyes of the Divine Illumination Ancient Sect. Moreover, his bounty and ranking on the Divine Punishment Roll were both at the bottom. This made the monk in black feel very uncomfortable. A heretic that the Hidden Land realm values so much has become a small target in the eyes of the Divine Illumination Ancient Sect. Doesn't this make the Hidden Land realm seem too useless? Sha Luqing chuckled. Don't misunderstand. Before entering the Kunlun ruins, the Divine Illumination Ancient Sect didn't know much about this kid. That's why we treated you as a nobody. I didn't come to the Kunlun ruins to kill this kid. However, I realized later on that this kid is far from ordinary. I'm sure that if I can bring his head back to the sect, the bounty will definitely be many times more than 30 Great Dao treasure crystals. At the end of his sentence, he could not help but lick his lips like a bloodthirsty beast. The Great Dao treasure crystal was born from the origin of chaos in the world. Its effects were miraculous, and it was extremely beneficial to the cultivation of powerhouses above the Great Saint stage. At the same time, the Great Dao treasure crystal was also a rare currency used for transactions on the ancient Starry Sky path. It was also regarded as a Tao crystal. The value of a Tao crystal was comparable to a 10,000-year-old spiritual herb. To a great saint stage powerhouse, the Tao crystal was undoubtedly the best currency for transactions. It was irreplaceable. After hearing Sha Liuqing's words, the monk in black felt much more balanced. He suggested, "This kid is difficult to deal with, and he has a rare treasure. The spoils of war are extremely tempting just by killing him. Why don't we work together?" Sha Liuqing's eyes flickered. "How? We'll split the spoils of war in half." "All right." Sha Liuqing thought for a moment and agreed. Lin Sun's strength made him vigilant. If he could work together with the Hidden Land Realm's Arhut Du, the chances of success would undoubtedly be much higher. Only the top figures among the descendants of the Great Saint Plane in the Hidden Land Realm could have the title of Arhut Du heir. The black-robed monk in front of him had the Dharma name Ku Du, but in the Dark World, he was called Blood Arhut by countless vicious people. It was because under this person's hands, there were over 10,000 corpses. Their bodies died in blood. On this day, no one knew who spread the news that Lin Sun was going to the pilgrimage platform. It soon spread all over the Kunlun ruins and attracted a lot of attention. The cold and silent ancient land, the broken sky, the blood-red earth, this was a mysterious, evil, and dangerous forbidden area. Through the transmission of the five-color altar, Lin Sun and the others appeared in this world. Practically at the first possible moment, they withdrew their respective treasures and went on full alert. Everyone, from this moment on, danger is everywhere. Whether or not we can reach the pilgrimage platform will depend on our abilities. Meng Yi took a deep breath, his eyes dark. Above his head, a Taoist diagram polished from ancient animal skin floated. Millions of misty light showered down and enveloped him. In his hand, he was controlling a white tortoiseshell compass, which was obviously used to guide the way. Lin Sun glanced over and saw that Ji Qian and Zhang Heng were also armed to the teeth. Buzz! Immediately, he took out the broken sword and secretly grasped the Great Way immeasurable bottle in his palm. The qi around him began to run quietly. Ahu did not dare to be negligent. She was ready. Her dress fluttered, and wisps of vigorous purple Taoist light appeared in her palm. Meng Yi could not help but glance at her. He seemed a little surprised, but he did not say anything. "Let's go." Meng Yi flew up and led the way. He did not dare to use the method of space diversion. It was not because of the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth, but because this dangerous forbidden area was full of too many disasters and murderous tribulations. Using space diversion was no different from courting death. The group moved forward carefully. It was as if they were traveling through the river of time. All that came to their faces was the aura of time. Everyone could not help but feel their hearts palpitate when they sensed this. There was no doubt that this was the fluctuation of the rules of time. Like a trickle, it spread in this dangerous forbidden area. Fortunately, they were fully vigilant and possessed cultivations at the peak of the Great Saint Realm. If it was any other cultivator, then that cultivator would be bound to be unable to endure the corrosion of the energy of time, and that cultivator's lifespan would dry up at a shocking speed before rotting away in the end. The ultimacy of time is regarded as the supreme law. Even among emperors, very few can comprehend and control it. Meng Yi's expression was solemn. "I never thought that the fluctuation of the rules of time in this forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform would be so obvious, rising and falling like the tide." Lin Sun was silent. He was trying to comprehend the power of time. Hiss! In an instant, a strand of his hair turned snow white and withered, as if he was being punished by time. Lin Sun was shocked and did not dare to act rashly. This forbidden area was very desolate. At first glance, it was a scene of desolation, and destruction. Stars were floating in the void one after another, all mottled and broken. There were also broken pieces of the world, turning into floating pieces of land, lying there like corpses that had fallen in the river of time. The gloomy and oppressive atmosphere enveloped the world, making this place look extremely strange and horrifying. No one knew what had happened in the ancient times to make this forbidden area so deathly silent. It is said that the world withered here, the stars fell here forever, and time was barren here. Only this pilgrimage platform is immortal. Oh transmitted his voice to Lin Sun. Now it seems that it is not a lie. Lin Sun was surprised. The world withered. The stars fell forever. Time was barren. Only the pilgrimage platform was immortal. A little understanding of the meaning was enough to make any cultivator feel cold. No one dared to imagine that there could be such a strange place in the world. Suddenly, a wave of strange, splashing sounds resounded in this deathly silent and cold atmosphere. It was like the gurgling of a stream, and it came from the extremely distant horizon. My God, what is that? Jiang Heng's eyes widened as he cried out involuntarily. Lin Sun and the others were also shocked at this moment. In their vision, they saw a snow-white river flowing from the sky. The river water was white and crystal clear, without a trace of impurity. When it flowed from the sky, it sprinkled magnificent light and shadow, fascinating people. Looking at it, it seemed to reflect the changes of the four seasons, the vicissitudes of time, and the vicissitudes of the world. Let's go. Meng Yi and Ah, whose expressions changed at the same time, as if they had encountered something extremely terrible. They quickly moved away from here with Lin Sun and the others. Just as Lin Sun was puzzled, he saw the river hit a piece of floating land. The land, which was thousands of miles wide, decayed silently and turned into flying ashes and dissipated. The water droplets that sprayed out seemed so tiny, yet they shattered and exploded the remains of the stars in the vicinity. Such a scene was simply like the ruler of the heavens crushing numerous stars and destroying numerous continents, and it was extremely shocking. In the end, the splashing water droplets converged again and turned into a snow-white river, gradually disappearing into the horizon. What was that? Jiang Heng's face was pale. It was the first time she had encountered such a terrible thing. The torrent of time. Meng Yi exhaled with lingering fear and gave the answer. This was a torrent produced by the purest power of the law of time. Wherever it passed, it was like the saber of time, enough to cut down everything in the world. Can this power of law be absorbed and controlled? Lin Sun asked. Impossible. In the past, there was a great figure in the Emperor realm who broke into this place and tried to collect the torrent of time with supreme magic in an attempt to comprehend the power of time imprinted in it. But in the end, his soul was destroyed. Meng Yi revealed a secret that made Lin Sun and the others gasp. Even a great figure in the Emperor realm could not resist such a terrible power of time. This was indeed too shocking. They continued to move forward. The world became more and more desolate, and more star remains and land fragments appeared, like tombs that had fallen here forever. After a full incense stick of time, 9 blood-red full moons appeared in the distant sky, emitting a scarlet dim light. The Blood Moon Wilderness. Meng Yi's eyes glowed with a frightening divine light. Everyone, be careful. From now on, there will be many strange and ominous things and disasters. As soon as his voice died away, Ji Qian trembled all over and said, Brother Meng, look, is that the buried souls of Death Tree? At this time, everyone also saw the tree rooted in the void. No one knew how high it was. Its branches were withered, its trunk cracked, and its whole body was surrounded by visible death air. Its dense branches were densely packed with black holes, as if there were countless tombs. The strangest thing was that the withered tree was not fixed, but slowly moving in the void, as if it were a living thing. At this moment, Lin Sun felt cold all over, and his hair stood on end. His muscles tightened as he sensed a great danger. In the densely packed black holes of the withered tree, there were many black shadows. If one looked carefully, it was shockingly numerous corpses. There were humans and living beings of various races, and they were of all shapes and sizes. Every sea of consciousness was broken and incomplete, filled with terrible black death air. When Lin Sun's consciousness approached, some corpses seemed to be aware of it, and suddenly sat up, Whoosh! For a moment, the branches on the withered tree shook violently, and countless tomb-like black holes were alarmed, emitting billowing death air that blotted out the sky and the sun. Almost at the same time, corpses walked out of the black holes of the tree, like a group of ghosts and gods from hell, emitting a monstrous and terrifying aura. The 9 blood moons in the sky shed wisps of strange scarlet light, bathing these corpses in it, making their aura even more terrifying. Looking from afar, the withered tree was rooted in the void, and corpses were standing on it. 9 blood moons hung in the sky above their heads, and the deathly aura that blotted out the sky was like ink dyeing the void pitch black. The scene was extremely strange and terrifying. It really is the legendary buried souls of Death Tree. Brother Lin, quickly take out the flying immortal token. Meng Yi's expression changed abruptly, and he quickly reminded Lin's son. Buzz. Chapter 1827. Buzz. The 2 tokens of flying immortals produced a strange fluctuation, sprinkling a rain of light that enveloped Lin Sun and the others. Almost at the same time, a corpse moved through the void and slapped the light curtain derived from the tokens of flying immortals with a loud bang. Lin Sun and the others were all shocked, their faces changing slightly. It was just a palm, but had the power to crush the sky and crush the mountains and rivers. The death chi bursting out of the palm turned into a strange power of law and spread, extremely frightening. But such a terrible palm was silently dissolved by the light curtain derived from the tokens of flying immortals. The rain of light flowed, and only a layer of ripples appeared. Lin Sun and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. Looking up, they saw that the corpse was shaped like a giant cat, with a row of bone spurs on its back. The broken corpse was surrounded by a fierce death chi and a pair of strange scarlet eyes. Bang, bang, bang. It seemed unwilling to give up. It let out a ferocious roar and instantly shot out thousands of palm prints, fierce and violent. The power of each blow was enough to easily kill a great saint. Even though these attacks were finally blocked by the light curtain of flying immortals, it still made Lin Sun and the others' hearts churn and their bodies shiver. The combat power of this corpse was completely above that of a great saint, and even more terrifying than a saint king. Without the tokens of flying immortals, none of them was destined to be its opponent. We've just arrived at the Blood Moon Wilderness, and we've already encountered the buried soul dead tree. Our luck seems to be a little too bad. Meng Yi's expression was ugly. The buried soul dead tree was an extremely terrible and ominous tree. This tree was like a huge graveyard, burying the corpses of countless strange and ferocious creatures. These corpses were also called the buried soul dead tree. Each of their combat power was extremely terrifying, and killing a saint was as easy as cutting grass. In the past, many of the strong who came to the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform died in the hands of the buried soul dead tree. Ji Qian and Jiang Heng both gasped. They had also heard of the horror of the buried soul dead tree. Even a quasi-emperor could not escape death, let alone a great saint like them. Brother Lin, I feel something is wrong. Although the buried soul dead tree is terrible, it never takes the initiative to attack, Ahu said quickly. In other words, even if we encounter the buried soul dead tree, as long as we don't take the initiative to provoke it, we can avoid it safely. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed, and he was about to say something. Another group of buried spirits and fierce corpses rushed down from the dead tree of buried souls. Each of them was filled with the aura of death as they charged at Lin Sun and the others. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, the area where Lin Sun and his companions were located was besieged by the terrifying corpses in all directions. The flying immortal light screen flowed like a waterfall of light rain, and only then did it completely dissolve these attacks. No, this is too abnormal. With the flying immortal token, it's enough to resolve this disaster. So why are they still charging over? Jigan was shocked, furious, and in disbelief. Jiang Heng was already frightened. Her body was shivering, and her pretty face was deathly pale. Those corpses were too sinister and terrifying, as if they were evil spirits from hell. In the three forbidden grounds of the Kunlun realm, anything abnormal can happen. Everyone, we might have met with some trouble. Meng Yi's face darkened. The thing that horrified them the most was that as time passed, more and more corpses appeared on the ancient buried spirit tree. They surged over like a tide and covered the entire world. Each and every one of them was so terrifying. As for Lin Sun and his companions, they seemed to be standing on an isolated island surrounded by seawater. It was the power of the flying immortal light screen that barely prevented them from being harmed. But if they continued to be besieged like this, the power of the flying immortal token would be exhausted sooner or later. And then, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lin Sun and Hu both tried to move with the flying immortal token in their hands, but they could not move an inch at all. In other words, the power of the flying immortal light screen could only be used for passive defense, but it could not be used against enemies. This caused their hearts to sink. This forbidden ground of the pilgrimage platform is too terrifying. If I had known this, I would rather give up the opportunity than come here. Jiang Heng's beautiful face was gloomy. As far as the eye could see, there were ferocious spirits everywhere. Being trapped here was like waiting for the judgment of death in front of the gates of hell. It was chilling and despairing. Brother Meng, tell us what we should do now. Ji Qian pinned his hopes on Meng Yi, his eyes full of expectation. I didn't expect such an accident to happen as soon as we entered the forbidden ground of the pilgrimage platform. Meng Yi's expression was ugly. He was also helpless. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a strange and terrifying existence as the buried soul's tree as soon as they arrived at the Bloody Moon Wilderness? Rumble, the buried soul's corpses were still madly attacking, roaring ferociously like thousands of evil spirits smelling blood and choosing to devour them. The flying immortal token buzzed, sprinkling a rain of light that turned into a flowing light screen, blocking all the attacks. It was very magical, but everyone could see that the power of the flying immortal token was being consumed rapidly. Let me try, Lin Sun suddenly said. He was the only one who had not said a word before. Now that he spoke, everyone's eyes focused on him. Brother Lin, do you have a way to get out of here? Ji Qian asked excitedly. This was like a person in a hopeless situation seeing a glimmer of hope. Jiang Heng could not help showing a glimmer of hope. At this moment, she did not care about the fact that she had once regarded Lin Sun as a traitor. As long as she could get out of here, she would be willing to owe Lin Sun a great favor. Meng Yi could not help but be startled, his eyes filled with surprise. Brother Lin, it will be best if you have a way. No. Lin Sun shook his head. These two words were like pouring a basin of cold water on them. But I can give a try. I can't just sit back and wait for death. Despite Lin Sun's words, Ji Qian and Jiang Heng still could not help showing disappointment and sadness. So what if he was the great sage? In the face of death, he would also lose control of his state of mind. Meng Yi sighed softly and said no more. Only Ahu looked calm and said, I will protect you. Lin Sun nodded. Whoosh, he took a deep breath and looked solemn. His whole body was emitting Buddha's light, like a legendary Buddha, born in the tranquil country, sitting on a big lotus. And from his mouth came an ancient chanting, like the sound of Sanskrit, and a magical power spread out. Dharma scripture. This was the supreme scripture created by holy monk Du Ji and Black Phoenix, Holy Queen together, containing endless magic. For example, what Lin Sun was displaying at this moment was the Great Salvation Method, which specialized in restraining and guiding evil spirits in the world. Is this the method of the Hidden Land realm? Ji Qian was astonished and shocked. Meng Yi and Jiang Heng also looked incredulous. The Hidden Land realm, one of the three giants of the Dark World, its successor was called Salvation Walker. Anyone who was regarded as a heretic by them would be killed mercilessly. Their style of action was comparable to that of the killers of the Divine Sunshine ancient sect. Did Lin Sun have something to do with the Hidden Land realm? This made Meng Yi a little surprised and doubtful. Lin Sun didn't explain, and Ahu didn't bother to explain. At such a critical moment, How could she pay attention to these details? The sound of Sanskrit was vast, like a Buddha preaching. The power produced was mysterious, but when it spread out, it did not produce any lethality. Those buried spirits and fierce corpses were not affected at all. Their madness was undiminished, and their ferocity was monstrous. It doesn't work after all, Ji Qian sighed. Jiang Heng bit her lip, and her pretty face became paler. She had just stepped into the great sage realm. How could she be willing to be buried here? Meng Yi was silent. Lin Sun was not discouraged. The current situation might be extremely dangerous, but he had seen mountains of corpses and seas of blood, so he would not lose his sense of propriety. However, at this moment, Ahu's delicate body trembled and said, "Brother Lin, the power of the fairy token is weakening." What? Ji Qian and Jiang Heng were shocked. Sure enough, under the attack of a group of buried spirits and fierce corpses, the fairy light curtain began to tumble violently, not as strong as before. It seems that in the end, we can only choose to fight with our lives. Meng Yi's voice was heavy. Lin Sun couldn't help frowning. After thinking about it, he turned his palm over, and a bronze lamp appeared. The mottled and dim shadow of the lamp fluttered, transforming into a mysterious power that calmed people's heart, like a little light in the darkness. The Great Way without blame lamp. With a bang, as soon as the lamp appeared, outside the fairy light curtain, a broken figure, like a giant dog, burst into pieces as if struck by lightning. Its body turned into surging black death air, evaporating like a tide. Vaguely, there seemed to be a shadow emerging in the black death air, cupping one hand to Lin Sun from a distance. In Lin Sun's heart, a voice sounded, "Thank you for helping me get rid of my predicament today." This, Ji Qian and Jiang Heng both widened their eyes. They didn't notice the invisible figure and the voice. They only saw Lin Sun sacrifice a lamp and extinguish a ferocious corpse. Meng Yi's eyes were fixed on the bronze lamp in Lin Sun's palm in an instant. He seemed to be shocked. Lin Sun was refreshed. It was feasible. The shadow of the lamp was mottled, and the dim halo spread. One by one, the buried spirits and fierce corpses nearby exploded silently, turning into a surging black mist of death air. Vaguely, there were phantoms of all kinds of creatures, but without exception, they all saluted Lin Sun together. "Thank you for your help. Thank you for your help." Voices expressing gratitude also sounded in Lin Sun's heart one after another. It made Lin Sun realize that these buried spirits and fierce corpses were bound by the terrible forbidden power, just like those horrible creatures he met in the mulberry forest. Until today, they were freed by the power of the Great Way, without blame lamp. However, they were different from those terrifying creatures. Their release meant true death. In the following time, all the buried spirits and fierce corpses that rushed over were all destroyed by the power of the Great Way, without blame lamp, turning into black mist of death air. This huge contrast and reversal stunned Ji Qian and Jiang Heng. Their brows were full of shock. They never thought that Lin Sun would have such a trick. Meng Yi's eyes also flashed with surprise, and he was speechless. Between heaven and earth, evil spirits and evil spirits were everywhere, like a dark purgatory, intertwined with death, and a lamp held up a great light. In the past 2 days, Goldfish wrote 2 articles related to Mind Mountain and 9 Emperor weapons of Kunlun ruins on the public account, and the response was very strong. Chapter 1828. Hundreds and thousands of buried spirit corpses scattered one after another, turning into black mist that covered heaven and earth. The great Tao lamp of no blame floated in the air, its wick swaying about. The dim and mottled light scattered down, spreading its radiance and scattering all enemies. Lin Sun's figure bathed in the dim light added an ethereal and mysterious aura to him. Meng Yi and the others were completely dumbfounded. Since ancient times, it was unknown how many experts had come to the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform, but all of them perished in front of the buried spirit dead tree. In fact, People like Ji Qian and Jiang Heng had already felt despair, and their hearts were dead. But who would have thought that Lin Sun, whom they didn't think highly of, resolved the disaster with a bronze lamp? Especially when they saw those ferocious beasts that could easily kill a saint stage being turned into ashes like weeds. They were all shocked. Crash! The black mist roiled while the aura of death was heavy, and it covered the sky and blotted out the sun. There were no more buried spirits and ferocious corpses that charged over. Standing in the center and looking around, there was only a vast expanse of darkness. Lin Sun, and who put away the flying immortal token together. At practically the exact same time, the black mist of death that covered the heavens and the earth rumbled as it surged into the Grand Tao Innocence Lamp. From afar, it looked like a whale swallowing water. Lin Sun was surprised. Soon, he noticed that the dense and unparalleled death qi turned into drops of pure black lamp oil and soaked in the innocent lamp. This mysterious and unfathomable ancient treasure, one of the 9 emperor weapons of Kunlun, also radiated an indescribably mysterious aura at this moment. It was as if he had gained an invisible divine life force. When the aura of death that covered the sky was completely collected, a finger-thick layer of pure black lamp oil appeared in the great Tao innocent lamp. Looking at the field again, there was no trace of the buried spirit death tree. Only the 9 blood-colored full moons in the sky shone with a dim red light. Ji Qian, Jiang Heng, and the others all heaved a long sigh of relief as if they had escaped from death. Their expressions were filled with unconcealable joy and excitement. Meng, he was also in a trance. He seemed emotional, shocked, and relieved. Ahu pursed her lips and chuckled, her beautiful eyes glistening like water. But Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of all this, standing still in a daze. As the great path lamp of no blame absorbed a layer of black lamp oil, an inheritance comprehension quietly appeared in his mind, like the sonorous voice of the great path resounding in his heart. Wu Jiu is the guide. The flame of the lamp is bright. Come and go, save the souls of the lost. In the end, these insights turned into a secret text called Soul Guide, which was imprinted in Lin Sun's mind. After a little understanding, he found that it was a way to use the great Tao no-blame lamp. This surprised Lin Sun. He didn't expect that he would get the incantation of the innocent lamp by chance. Brother Lin, it's all thanks to you this time. Ji Qian looked ashamed. I apologize for my previous hostility towards you. In the future, I will definitely compensate Brother Lin accordingly. Jiang Heng also nodded. If Lin Sun didn't help them this time, they would have been killed. How could they not appreciate such a life-saving grace? There's no need for compensation. Let's just treat it as an exchange of blows, no concord. Lin Sun said casually. Mengi smiled and said, this time, we all owe Brother Lin a huge favor. How about this? After we enter the Zen Ascension platform, if we can obtain any fortuitous encounters or fortunes, Brother Lin will be the first to obtain them. Ji Qian and Jiang Heng nodded in agreement. Lin Sun didn't object to this. After a short rest, the group continued on their way. The Bloody Moon Wilderness was lonely and barren. The world was vast, dim, and oppressive. Walking in it was like walking in the dark underworld, depressing people's mind. It wasn't a peaceful journey. It was even full of danger and murderous intent. There was a strange cold current that turned into an ice storm raging, freezing the heaven and earth. The biting cold wind had a terrible lethality to the spirit of practitioners. This kind of cold current was also regarded as the soul-blowing wind, which could destroy the soul of a sage with a gentle blow. There was silver sand floating in the sky, each of which was tiny and dazzling. They seemed small, but they could tear the sky and smash the stars. There were also strange creatures hiding in the void. They looked like black-haired monkeys, but they had green faces, fangs, and big bloody mouths. These ferocious creatures, called ghost-faced water monkeys, could travel through space without a trace and were impossible to guard against. A cry from them could shatter a practitioner's state of mind and destroy his cultivation. It was strange and terrible. Along the way, without the flying immortal token, Lin Sun and the others would have suffered many disasters. Several hours later, an extremely tall and lofty mountain suddenly appeared on the horizon. Numerous pitch-black chains that seemed like enormous dragons hung down from the mountain, and they were densely covered in strands of a gorgeous blood-red glow. Just looking at it from a distance, Lin Sun and the others suddenly felt a chill on their faces. Their bodies seemed to fall into an ice cave, and a strong sense of danger surged through them. Godlock Sky Peak. Ji Qian cried out involuntarily, trembling as if he had witnessed the most terrible thing in the world. He, Ji Qian, was the first true disciple of Xuanji Taoism sect, a core descendant of the Ji clan, and a famous peerless sage. But since entering the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform, he frequently lost his composure and was frightened more than once. Not only him, but Jiang Heng was probably the same. Meng, Yi, Lin Sun, and Ahu were a little better, but not much better, because the forbidden area was too horrifying. There were many dangers and strange things that could easily take their lives. Walking in it was like dancing on the tip of a knife, lingering on the line between life and death. Not only were they frightened, but they were also under great pressure to survive. But along the way, Ji Qian had never been as frightened as he was now. This legendary mountain actually exists? Jiang Heng's teeth chattered, and her pretty face was pale. According to rumor, there was a strange mountain within the forbidden area of the ascension platform. It was like a natural chasm that lay across the mountain, and 1,800 extremely strange divine chains hung down from it. Every single divine chain possessed the strange energy to restrain gods and annihilate sages. The most frightening thing was that in the past, almost no one who saw this mountain survived. This mountain was the Godlock Sky Peak. But even Ji Qian and Jiang Heng did not expect that they would be so unlucky to encounter such a dangerous mountain on the way. All of a sudden, both of them seemed to have lost all their strength, and their faces turned pale. It's over. There's no way out this time. The flying immortal token is useless, and the Godlock Sky Peak is a sign of death. Once you encounter it, no matter who you are doomed to die. Ji Qian murmured with a miserable expression. Our luck is too bad along the way. As far as I know, most of the experts who came to the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform in the past could reach the pilgrimage platform safely within 6 hours. Jiang Heng said with a hint of unwillingness. Moreover, they didn't encounter as many dangers as we did. Is the heavens playing tricks on us? Are they trying to send us to our deaths? Meng Yi's face was as gloomy as water. Lin Sun and Hu looked at each other, and their expressions were uncertain. Thinking about it carefully, they found that the dangers and killing tribulations they encountered along the way were indeed a little too frequent. As soon as they encountered the torrent of time, and before long they encountered the buried soul tree, and were besieged by countless buried souls and fierce corpses. It was not easy to escape the killing, and along the way, they encountered the soul-blowing wind, silver light sand, ghost-faced water monkey, and other strange and ferocious disasters. This seemed very abnormal, depressing, and palpitating. If it were an ordinary practitioner, he would have collapsed long ago and would not have been able to hold on until now. But now, they even encountered the legendary Godlock Sky Peak. Brother Lin, have you noticed that we haven't met any practitioner along the way, but all kinds of killing tribulations and disasters? Ahu quickly transmitted her voice. Her expression was a little strange. This can only prove that either our luck is really too bad, or we've taken the wrong route. You suspect, Lin Sun was about to say something. Boom! A terrifying force blasted towards Lin Sun and Ahu from behind. It was too fast. Caught off guard, Lin Sun and Ahu could only rely on instinct to dodge. In the deafening collision, Lin Sun staggered back a few steps in the void. Although he was not injured, the clothes on his back were torn, and his skin was burning with pain. Ahu was hit on the shoulder. She let out a muffled groan, and her pretty face turned pale. It's you. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun and Ahu looked at Meng Yi in unison, their eyes as cold as ice. It was Meng Yi who launched a sneak attack just now. If not, how could the two of them not even have time to react? I'm sorry, I've deceived you two along the way. I really feel guilty, but I have to do this, Meng Yi said. Although he said so, there was not a trace of apology on his handsome and elegant face. Instead, there was a faint smile on his face. At this moment, he held Ji Qian in his left hand and Jiang Heng in his right, standing far away. What? Ahu said coldly. Ji Qian and Jiang Heng also widened their eyes in astonishment. They didn't expect that such a thing would happen at this moment. Just as they were about to say something, they found that their power was imprisoned and they couldn't even make a sound, which surprised and confused them. What on earth did Meng Yi want to do? Because I made a deal with someone. Meng Yi sighed softly. This deal is too tempting for me, so I had to give up the cooperation with you two and deal with you. But it seems that you didn't succeed. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold and full of killing intent. Meng Yi smiled and said with unquestionable firmness, No, you will die this time. His gaze shot towards a distant god confinement peak. Do you see that? It won't be long before the demonic divine chains on this mountain will bind the two of you and imprison you beneath the mountain. After that, they'll slowly grind away your flesh and soul until both of you are completely annihilated. At the end of his words, he looked at Lin Sun and Ahu with pity. I might as well tell you directly that a real emperor was killed under this mountain a long time ago. Do you think you can escape this disaster? Chapter 1829. A mountain had once obliterated the existence of the Emperor realm. Both Lin Sun and Hu's hearts sank. Swish! Lin Sun struck with his broken sword. With a puff, Meng Yi's figure burst like a bubble, turning into a rain of light and disappearing. Hundreds of miles away, Meng Yi's laughter came from afar. Brother Lin, don't waste your energy anymore. Since I dare to do this, how could I put myself in danger? Water mirror shadow is an inherited secret technique of the Qiongqi lineage. It's similar to the 1,000 body transformations. However, the water mirror shadow is an extremely marvelous escape technique. It's able to silently create an extremely lifelike figure, while the real body has already fled far away. There was a trace of unwillingness in Hu's voice. I should have guessed that it was Meng Yi who played tricks along the way. As soon as they entered the Blood Moon Wilderness, they coincidentally ran into the buried soul tree. According to common sense, they could have avoided it without any danger. However, those buried souls' fierce corpses were all alarmed. Even with the flying immortal token, these ferocious creatures were not afraid of death, which was too abnormal. Until later, the strangeness and danger they encountered along the way could be said to be extremely rare and extremely frequent, far more than before. How could all these abnormalities be related to bad luck? Now, who completely understood and finally dared to confirm that it was Meng Yi who guided the way along the way. Only he could cause all these abnormalities. Unfortunately, it was undoubtedly a step too late to understand now. From the beginning, I never completely trusted this person, but I didn't expect to be schemed against by him. Lin Sun frowned. There's no time to lose. Let's leave here first. Crash! Before his voice died away, a deafening collision sound rang out. On the godlike sky peak in the distance, a chain like a big dragon fell down, piercing the void and sweeping over. The chain glowed with a strange light, like a big black dragon, as if there was nothing in the space. In an instant, it appeared above Lin Sun and Hu's head and shrouded them. The next moment, Lin Sun and Hu appeared in front of the godlike sky peak, tied up like rice dumplings. Boom! The terrifying and strange chain fell, suppressing the two figures to the bottom of the mountain, and they disappeared in the rolling mist of chaos. It's finally done. Far away, Meng Yi was standing in the air. A sealed inscription of the pilgrimage stele floated above his head, emitting an obscure light that enveloped his figure. Brother Meng, what's going on? At this moment, Ji Qian finally realized that Meng Yi had set up a huge trap along the way to trap Lin Sun and Ahu. This made him furious. If it wasn't for Brother Lin, we would have been killed by the buried spirit fierce corpse. Is this how you treat your savior? Jiang Heng was also puzzled and angry. She was completely unaware of Meng Yi's means of killing Lin Sun and Lin Sun. Now that she thought of it, she felt a chill run down her spine. Meng Yi's expression was calm and unmoved. He smiled and said, I was the one who attracted the buried spirits and ferocious corpses here. I plan to use these ferocious creatures to kill the two of them in one fell swoop. Who would have thought an accident would happen? You, Ji Qian and Jiang Heng shuddered all over. Only now did they realize that this plot had begun as early as they entered the Blood Moon Wilderness. To tell you the truth, Brother Ji, I've exerted all my skills along the way. I plan to use those terrifying calamities and ferocious creatures to kill Lin Sun and Jiang Heng, but they were able to resolve it safely every time. Speaking of this, Meng Yi could not help sighing. Even I have to admit that Lin Sun's means are really amazing. No, it should be extremely heaven-defying. Among the peers on the starry ancient path, only a small group of people can be on par with him. Then, he revealed a look of disappointment. It's a pity that Lin Sun's treasures are a mysterious pagoda that appeared in the Taoism Battle of Emperors, a bronze lamp that can easily defeat the buried spirit fierce corpse, a broken blade with a heaven-defying aura, a pair of Avicii Yuan killer swords that belong to Mingyi Sword Emperor, a mysterious mutton-fat jade bottle. He was very familiar with them because he had long been eyeing Lin Sun's treasures along the way. But in the end, he sighed. Now they're all gone. Godlock Sky Peak was the most terrifying and ominous mountain in the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform. It had once obliterated real emperors. Lin Sun and Jiang Heng were imprisoned and suppressed. Not only would they die, but their treasures would also be destroyed. This was what made Meng Yi's heart ache. Ji Qian's face was gloomy. But why do you insist on dealing with Brother Lin? Isn't it good to be friends with him? Yes, along the way, Brother Lin has never been passive or negligent, and has even saved us many times. Why do you still want to kill him? Jiang Heng also found it hard to accept. Meng Yi's expression became cold. He glanced at the two and said, Back then, you regarded him as an enemy and coveted his treasures. Why do you sympathize and pity him now? Remember, I'm helping you. After saying that, he floated away. Ji Qian and Jiang Heng's expressions flickered, and they felt extremely uncomfortable. Meng Yi's actions not only made them angry, but they also felt an indescribable chill. He was too scheming. No one could guess when he would kill you without leaving a trace. Meng Yi, let me ask you one question. Why? Ji Qian shouted. He and Meng Yi had been friends since they were young. But now he suddenly realized that he did not know the other party at all. I made a deal with Wen Qingxue. As long as I can kill Lin Sun, Wen Qingxue will help me obtain the holy pilgrimage platform, Meng Yi said without turning his head. You too. This is just a fight for the Great Path. I'm not related to Lin Sun and have no enmity with him. I only want to kill him for the sake of my Great Path. Also, if you don't follow me, you won't be able to enter the pilgrimage platform anymore. Hearing that, Ji Qian said angrily, T fight for the Great Path. It's just a plot. Go. From now on, I, Ji Qian, will never have a friend like you. Meng Yi's departing figure paused for a moment. After a while, a sneer formed at the corner of his lips. You're already a great sage, yet you're still so childish. Then he did not look back. Eldest senior brother, you did the right thing. Jiang Heng took a deep breath and said, Meng Yi, no matter how strong he is and how powerful his means are, is only a despicable person. Ji Qian's expression was gloomy. I didn't expect him to become like this either. Forget it. Let's think about how to survive in this forbidden area. It's a pity that an outstanding talent like Brother Lin died in the hands of a shameless villain like Meng Yi before he could even enter the starry ancient path to shine. Jiang Heng sighed. Godlock Sky Peak. It was like a natural chasm with 1,808 devilish chains that were thick like black dragons hanging down from it. Chaotic energy surged and seethed, and they covered this great ominous mountain that caused the expressions of countless people to change upon mentioning it. causing it to seem mysterious and strange. No one knew that there was a dark and gloomy sealed world at the bottom of this mountain, because all the experts that were sealed here were dead. Bang! Lin Sun and Ahu were smashed hard on the ground. They saw stars, and their muscles and bones were almost broken. They could not help but let out muffled groans of pain. Although they were bound, they still looked up at the first moment and spread out their divine senses. This was a dark, cold, secret realm. The sky was gray and covered with a thick layer of black. The ground was densely covered with broken bones, broken and decayed armors and treasures. At first glance, they could not see the end of it. Could it be that this was under the godlock sky peak? Lin Sun and Ahu looked at each other. They wanted to struggle, but their strength was confined, and they could not even lift a finger. Too little praise are not enough to fill the gap between my teeth. Is the world getting worse and worse? Or, after the Taoism battle of the emperors, all the emperors on the starry sky ancient path are dead? A hoarse voice sounded, as if it had not spoken for a long time, but the disappointment in its words was not concealed. Boom! In an instant, Lin Sun and Ahu only felt that their bodies were light, and the black chain that bound them suddenly fell into the darkness in the distance. Only then did the two of them notice that the dark curtain of the sky in the distance seemed to have collapsed, and an ancient Tao platform was revealed. On the Taoist platform, there was a skinny figure sitting cross-legged with disheveled hair. He was bound by dark chains all over his body, like a suppressed prisoner. The chain that bound Lin Sun and Lin Sun came from this skinny figure. Strangely, when the chain was retracted, it whipped the skinny figure fiercely, making the latter howl like a fierce beast. His body trembled violently, as if he was in great pain. The dark chains that bound him rattled and emitted an obscure light. No matter how he struggled, his figure was still trapped firmly on the platform in the end, and he was unable to move a single step. Puff! In the end, the chain returned and became as thick as a thumb. It pierced the scapula of the skinny figure, penetrated it, and entangled it. Both Lin Sun and Ahu were stunned. Originally, they thought that the chain on the god-locking sky peak was a strange and terrifying thing, and anyone who was imprisoned would be suppressed and obliterated. But now it seemed that the real target of these chains was not the practitioner who had mistakenly entered the god-locking sky peak, but the skinny figure who had been suppressed here for countless years. Who was he? Why was he suppressed by the god-locking sky peak? The most terrifying thing was that it was clearly this emaciated figure that had exerted his strength to control a chain that was binding him. And that was how he had captured the two of them and brought them here. But at the same time, the skinny figure also paid a heavy price for this. After the chain broke away from his control, it began to lash and suppress him. Whoosh, whoosh on the Taoist platform. The skinny figure gasped for breath. It took him a long time to recover from the endless pain, and he uttered a hoarse voice full of resentment. Old Pewty, when I get out of here, I will slaughter your mountain of mind and heart. Chapter 1830. The hoarse voice echoed in this dark space, making one's hair stand on end. Old man Subhoodie, annihilate Mount Inner Heart's orthodoxy. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered, and his heart was in turmoil. Back when he first entered the sinkhole, he had entered a place called the Bodhi Mystic Realm in the Demon Sage Mystic Realm and obtained a mystical Daoim. Lin Sun had learned from a strand of Skirich Lord Luo Tongtian's will brand that the Skirich Lord, who had fought against the great Zhou Void and dominated the heavens, had suffered a great loss in the endless ruins. That person sat on the cloud mat of the nine heavens, held the horsetail whisk of the great Tao, and held the tower of the great Tao without end. He was neither a Buddhist nor a Taoist, neither a demon nor Confucian. He was known as the master of Fangsuan Mountain. At the critical moment when Lin Sun was about to be possessed by the Lord of Skirich's will imprint when he pushed open the Skirich gate, it was the power of the karmic teaching him left behind by the master of Mount Fangsuan that had shattered the will of the Skirich Lord. The teaching him was the one Lin Sun got from the Bodhi secret realm, which was included in the Tower of Endless Tao. Did this mean that the Bodhi mystic realm was related to the master of Minuscule Mountain? At this moment, the emaciated figure that was bound and suppressed on the platform let out a resentful howl. He mentioned the name Bodhi and wanted to annihilate the orthodoxy of Fongsuan Mountain. How could Lin Sun not be shocked? Lin Sun clearly remembered that Xiankong Ghost King once said in the City of the Vane, "Master's Dharma name is like the great Tao. The heart can understand it, but the will cannot be transmitted." This also meant that the Dharma name of the master of Fongsuan Mountain was indescribable, like the great Tao. It was as if the Tao could be said, but it was not the Tao. The name could be named, but it was not the name. But at this moment, Lin Sun had a strong feeling that this old man sub-hoodie, who was hated by that emaciated figure, was probably the master of Mine Heart Mountain. "Brother Lin, we won't be able to escape. This place is covered in a terrifying forbidden energy, and it's like a prison that has completely abandoned the laws of the heavens and the earth, and it's like we're separated from the world." At this moment, Ahu swiftly sent a voice transmission. Her expression was extremely heavy, and she was astounded in her heart. Lin Sun sensed something wrong and couldn't help but gasp. What sort of damnable place is this? For the sake of suppressing a single person, it actually completely abandons the grand Tao of the universe. Isn't this too terrifying? Just how powerful was the emaciated figure on the Tao platform to receive such taboo care? "Hee, Guyupu, why aren't you saying anything? Didn't you see that I caught 2 more prey? Ha ha ha." On the Tao platform, the skinny figure laughed loudly, a hint of mockery in his voice. "It's been countless years. Even though I've been suppressed by that old bastard sub-hoodie and am unable to see the light of day again, I can still hunt down my prey. And you, Guyupu, can only watch helplessly. In this dim world, besides Lin Sun and Ahu, there was clearly only the skinny figure, yet he seemed to be talking with another person called Guyupu. Moreover, his words were filled with ridicule towards Guyupu. Not going to say anything? Looks like after countless years, your strength has already weakened to the extreme. Otherwise, why were you unable to stop me from killing them in time?" The skinny figure sneered, his voice gloomy. Lin Sun and Ahu were bewildered. God's ceiling sky peak. There were 1,800 chains that bound and suppressed the skinny figure on the Tao platform. Could it be that he was God? If so, who was Guyupu? Lin Sun and Ahu couldn't figure it out, but they vaguely felt that Guyupu's existence was to guard and suppress the skinny figure's murder. Just like a watchman in a prison, the skinny figure laughed strangely. "Look at the corpses all over the ground. Which one of them didn't die because of your Mind Mountain? If you hadn't suppressed me here, how could I have killed these people?" "What?" Lin Sun's pupil shrank. His words shocked him. He instantly judged that Guyupu must also be a member of Mind Mountain. At the same time, Ahu also glanced at Lin Sun. Obviously, she had also guessed it. "Not going to say anything? Then I'll kill a prey first for a sumptuous meal." No one answered for a long time. The skinny figure on the Tao platform seemed to be quite sullen. He suddenly straightened up and fixed his eyes on Lin Sun through his disheveled hair. Clatter! A chain inserted in the skinny figure's right arm suddenly rushed out, breaking through the void and rushing towards Lin Sun. Its speed was so fast, and its breath was so horrible and strange that it reached an incredible level. Lin Sun was just about to dodge, but a figure had already rushed out. He suddenly waved his sleeves, and the chain was shaken. It suddenly returned and inserted into the skinny figure again. The skinny figure let out a muffled groan of pain. He seemed to be extremely excited. "Guyupu, you finally came out. Ha 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 ha." His laughter was like thunder surging in this dark world. At this time, Lin Sun and Ahu finally saw the figure that suddenly appeared. This was a middle-aged man that wore a bamboo hat and a straw raincoat, and he seemed like a woodcutter. His entire body emanated a simple and ordinary aura. But when he stood there, he gave off the feeling that he was a towering wall, lofty and immeasurably imposing. "Kong Dutian, you're in big trouble," the middle-aged woodcutter said in a dull voice. Could it be that he is... Ahu seemed to have guessed something, and there was a look of shock in her eyes. "Who?" Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Ahu took a deep breath and sent a voice transmission. "I suspect. that the one being suppressed is the ancestor of the Imperial Kong clan, the strongest of the 7 great demon emperors of the primordial era. Demon Emperor, Solitary Heavens. Kong Dutian, Solitary Sky, Demonic Emperor. Lin Sun couldn't help but tremble. Could the skinny figure suppressed on the Taoist platform really be such a terrifying existence? Ahu's voice was full of uncontrollable surprise. It said that among the 7 demonic emperors in ancient times, Solitary Sky Demonic Emperor is the only one who achieved the ancestor of one Tao in the Emperor realm. The Imperial Kong family has always called his ancestor Solitary Sky, Tao Ancestor. But whether it's true or not, there are different opinions. The ancestor of one Tao. Lin Sun's face changed completely. Even if it was just a rumor, it was enough to make his heart palpitate. After all, this was the strongest of the 7 demonic emperors in ancient times. I'm in big trouble? On the Taoist platform, the skinny figure laughed madly. Gayupu, Gayupu, you deserve to be the stupidest of all the descendants of Mount Fonsuin. Not only are you stupid, but you're also stubborn. Don't you know that your source of Tao is on the verge of exhaustion and will be completely destroyed? As he finished speaking, his voice became ghastly. In the boundless years of the past, I've killed countless prey for the sake of baiting you to make a move and eliminate you. However, you were actually able to endure it and never showed yourself, causing me to be at a loss for what to do. At that time, I even killed a little Emperor Realm kid at the cost of my vitality, but I still couldn't make you show up. But now, I wonder why you can't bear it. Is it because you know that your time is coming and you want to struggle at the last moment? Ha ha. The skinny figure couldn't help laughing again. He'd already been suppressed for countless years and suffered boundless torture and tempering. Yet he'd never imagined that he would see the light of day once more today. At this point, Lin Sun, and who finally understood that those experts that had come to the forbidden area of the Ascension platform in the past weren't killed by Godlock Peak at all, but they died at the hands of this skinny figure. Are you done? Gu Yupu had been silent since the beginning when facing the skinny figure's provocation, and he stood there silently like a mountain. Even if he spoke at this moment, he seemed to be extremely depressed. It just so happened that his indifferent reaction caused the skinny figure to feel suffocated in his chest, and he felt as if he'd punched empty air, causing his entire body to feel uncomfortable. He couldn't help but roar, Gayupu, don't you know? You're going to die. So long as you die, I'll have a chance to escape. At that time, all the descendants of Mount Fongsuan will die. Impossible. Guyupu's reply was still concise and comprehensive. It was merely 3 words, and it was extremely calm, as if it didn't contain any emotion. This caused the skinny figure to fly into a rage. Impossible? You, Guyupu, are really an extremely stupid blockhead. Bang! In the next moment, his figure suddenly stood up from the platform while the chains on his entire body rumbled. Yet they were unable to press him down to the ground any longer. At the same time, a strand of boundlessly terrifying might swept out from his skinny figure, and he was like a god that had been trapped for eternity that had awakened at this moment. He had an insane bearing and disheveled hair, yet he emanated supreme might, and he was completely different from his dejected appearance when he was trapped like a prisoner. Just a glance from afar caused great terror to arise in Lin Sun and Hu's hearts. Their souls and mental states were on the verge of collapse, and they had a suffocating feeling of being on the verge of death. Right at this moment, the middle-aged woodcutter that stood by their side took a step forward. This single step caused Lin Sun and Hu to feel as if they'd been pulled back from the gates of hell, and the shock they suffered in their bodies and minds was completely resolved. Die! On the platform, the skinny figure roared loudly, while his entire body emanated a might that was capable of crushing the heavens and causing the sun, moon, and stars to tremble. At the same time, the middle-aged woodcutter took a deep breath. He'd changed as well. He was like a mountain that rose from the earth, rushing out of the clouds, holding up the sky, and shaking the void. He was immeasurably huge and towering. At this moment, Lin Sun and Hu couldn't see anything, and their divine senses seemed to have been abandoned. In a trance, They only heard a voice. The great way fluctuates, and no one in the heavens is spared. The strand of horsetail whisk that was placed on Lin Sun's body suddenly flashed and disappeared from Lin Sun's body. Fluctuating, the horsetail whisk. Immediately, the skinny figure roared angrily. The horsetail whisk of the Great Way has long been damaged. Why does its original power still exist in the world? After an unknown period of time, Lin Sun, whose body and mind had fallen into a blank, heard a voice again. Kong Du Qian, my master thought that it wasn't easy for you to attain the Great Way, so he suppressed you here and made you reflect on your mistakes, which was tantamount to leaving you a chance of survival. Unfortunately, it's hard for you to change your nature after all, and your ferocity hasn't diminished. This was the voice of the middle-aged woodcutter, and it was still as dull as ever. But the next moment, Lin Sun was stunned. Chapter 1831. Okay. Lin Sun agreed almost without thinking. Buzz. The Tower of Endless Way rushed out. At this instant, the thin figures panicked and even terrified howl resounded. No! How could this tower still exist in the world? Boom! Lin Sun felt his soul throbbing and lost consciousness completely. After a long time, a warm force poured into his body, making him gradually regain consciousness and perception. It was still the dark-sealed world. The world was gloomy, cold, and depressed. In the distance, the Tao platform was still there. However, the withered figure that was suppressed by countless chains had disappeared, leaving behind an empty space. Is he dead? He murmured. No, he's not dead. A muffled voice sounded in his ears. Lin Sun looked up and saw the middle-aged woodcutter standing beside him. There was a simple and gentle smile on his rough, dark and hard face. He said, Junior brother, my name is Gu Yupu. I was a woodcutter in the mountain and chopped firewood for a living. Later, I was enlightened by my master and was accepted into the sect. I ranked 9th. You can call me 9th senior brother. Lin Sun immediately saluted. 9th senior brother, I'm Lin Sun. Gu Yupu scratched his head dully and said, Junior brother, don't be so polite. Kong Du Qian is right. I'm the stupidest in the sect, and my master often says I'm a blockhead. There was a kind of pride and joy in his voice. Lin Sun was surprised. In his impression, the senior brother who mastered the saint method was unruly and fearless of the world. He could step into the sky and look down on all the world. Senior brother Xian Kong's temperament was upright, heroic, and warm-hearted. He faced death calmly. Shuya, whom Lin Sun had never met, was gentle, elegant, and scholarly. Li Xianwei was commented by a wisp of willpower of the Great Way as open-minded, unrestrained, and interesting. Lin Sun didn't expect that his 9th senior fellow apprentice would be such a simple and honest man who didn't put on airs and was the easiest to get close to. 9th senior brother, what on earth happened just now? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. As he spoke, he noticed that he was sitting cross-legged on one side with his eyes closed and his breath long, as if he was sleeping. He didn't disturb Hu. Junior brother, do you have wine? Gu Yupu sat on the ground casually and looked at Lin Sun eagerly. Of course, Lin Sun had some. He immediately took out a jar of fine wine and handed it over. Gu Yupu was overjoyed. He hugged the wine jar and drank to his heart's content. Only then did he smack his lips and cry out in delight. He said that he hadn't tasted wine since guarding this place. His voice was filled with nostalgia. Lin Sun didn't say much. He took out a lot of good wine and said that he would drink with his 9th senior brother. Gu Yupu was very happy. His rough face was full of smiles. Little junior brother, I really don't know if you're asking about anything else. Because after I was injured in the Tao battle of the emperors all those years ago, Master said that I had no hope of pursuing the Tao in this lifetime, and then he asked me if I had any unfulfilled wishes. Soon after, Gu Yupu spoke as if she was recalling the past. I said that I would stand guard before Kong Du Qian before I died. Then, my master agreed and brought me here. Since then, I've been guarding this place. Why are you doing this? Lin Sun could not help asking. I'm not reconciled to it, Gu Yupu said in a deep voice. In the Tao battle of the emperors, my opponent was Kong Du Qian. But I fought with him for 19 days, but I couldn't kill him. In the end, both of us were injured. He was depressed, and he couldn't help but drink another mouthful of wine while his eyes turned red. And he said in a hoarse voice, "At that time, if my performance wasn't too terrible, then Ji Xiao, junior brother Wu Zong, and junior sister Wen Lu wouldn't have died." Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. A Dao battle of the emperors actually caused the death of some descendants of Mao Mindheart? What kind of terrifying battle would that be? Ninth senior brother, it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself, Lin Sun said softly. Gu Yupu sighed. Master also said that the battle of orthodoxies is so cruel, and I don't have to regret it. But I'm not reconciled to it. His eyebrows were full of pain and resentment. Lin Sun picked up the wine and handed it to Gu Yupu. Then he also picked up a pot and drank it silently. Then he said, "Ninth senior brother, can you tell me about the Dao battle of the emperors?" Gu Yupu shook his head. "Junior brother, it's all a long time ago. The inside story is related to the battle of orthodoxies. The cause and effect involved are too great. If I tell you now, it will do more harm than good, and it is very likely to affect your future choice." Lin Sun was stunned and felt that the Dao battle of the emperors was not simple. Gu Yupu seemed to be a little apologetic. He scratched his head and said, "What's more, it's a battle that only the existences in the Emperor realm can participate in. You'd better cultivate honestly. It's not too late to know the inside story when you step into the Emperor realm." Lin Sun felt helpless. In the final analysis, it was because his cultivation was too weak. "Junior brother, look." Gu Yupu took out the Tower of Endless Way. The tower buzzed and splashed out rays of golden Tao light. Like chains, they bound Kong Dutian's figure. "Gu Yupu, old man Puty said that he wouldn't kill me. Are you going to disobey your master's order?" Kong Dutian roared. Gu Yupu turned a deaf ear to him and said to Lin Sun, "Junior brother, he is Demon Emperor Dutian, a peacock demon born in the chaos. He was born with 5-colored feathers and superb combat power. In primitive times, he was ranked first among the 7 demonic emperors." Even though Lin Sun had already guessed it, he still couldn't help but gasp when Gu Yupu confirmed it. This was a living existence in the Emperor realm. He was the head of the 7 demonic emperors in primitive times. He was the ancestor of the Kong family, an imperial family. But no matter how powerful he was still suppressed here for countless years and couldn't get out. This was naturally shocking. An inexplicable thought came to Lin Sun's mind. Demon Emperor Dutian is already so terrifying. Then how high the cultivation of the 9th senior brother who was able to fight against him in those days? Thinking of this, Lin Sun's heart rolled again. He felt that Gu Yupu was as simple and amiable as a stone. He almost forgot how powerful Gu Yupu was. He was at least in the Emperor realm. Hearing Gu Yupu's words, Kong Dutian was stunned and then couldn't help laughing wildly. "Junior brother? Ha ha ha. Such a weak little thing is the successor of your mountain of mind and heart. The affairs of the world are truly unpredictable. Has Fangtsuan Mountain declined to such an extent?" He didn't hide his contempt in his words. For a great demon emperor who had been famous in primitive times, a peerless great saint like Lin Sun was really not worth mentioning. Lin Sun sneered. "Ha ha. No matter how powerful you are, you won't be suppressed here and can't get out of here. How dare you?" Kong Dutian's face darkened. Crack! The next moment, the Taoist light that bound Kong Dutian suddenly rose and lashed down fiercely, making the latter scream in pain. His body twitched and twisted, and his figure became dim. Gu Yupu said in a deep voice, "How dare a prisoner talk to my junior brother like this? Do you think I don't exist?" Kong Dutian looked resentful. "If it weren't for Puty's tower, what would you be?" All of a sudden, Gu Yupu's face turned red, and he was rarely angry. "If it weren't for Brahma Buddha secretly helping you in the Taoist battle of the emperors, you wouldn't be qualified to fight with me." Brahma Buddha. Only then did Lin Sun realize that there was an inside story in the battle between Gu Yupu and Demon Emperor Dutian. Kong Dutian looked gloomy and finally snorted. "Since ancient times, the winner takes all. I don't want to talk nonsense with a blockhead like you. He glanced at Lin Sun coldly, revealing an unparalleled killing intent. Little guy, you're not bad. You came with Pewdie's Horsetail Whisk and Great Way Endless Tower. Every word was full of hatred. In his opinion, he was about to get out of here, but in the end, he was ruined by Lin Sun. Kong Duqian, it seems that you still don't understand your situation. Guyupu's voice was dull. Crack. Suddenly, rays of golden Tao light rose up like thousands of heavy whips, striking fiercely. Kong Duqian let out a shrill scream. His body curled up and twitched, becoming blurred and dim, as if it would collapse at any time. Guyupu, don't be complacent. Your source has been exhausted. Even if Pewdie comes, he can't save your life. Even so, Kong Duqian was still unyielding, and he roared ferociously. And you little bastard, if the descendants of the 7 demon emperors know that you are the successor of Mount Fongsuan, you will be killed sooner or later. Boom. In the end, he still couldn't bear the whip of golden Tao light. His figure turned into a scarred peacock covered with chaotic air, and he fainted. Ninth Senior Brother, you have really... Lin Sun was shocked. Guyupu's face showed a touch of open-mindedness, and he said, I knew this day would come, and I've already thought it through. Fortunately, before I die, I can meet my little junior brother and have a good meal. I have no regrets. Lin Sun's heart trembled. Although it was the first time they met, the 9th Senior Brother Guyupu left a very deep impression on him. He was simple, dull, and honest. Because of the death of some junior brothers, he felt guilty and blamed himself. So he chose to guard here until now. Now, knowing that Guyupu would die completely, how could Lin Sun not be sad? Little junior brother, since I've cultivated until now, I've long since become accustomed to life and death. Just think about it. I'm just a woodcutter with a clumsy disposition and ordinary natural talent. Being able to follow Master to cultivate and see all the wonders of the Grand Tao is an extremely great fortune. To me, death is nothing more than the curtains to my journey. Guyupu patted Lin Sun on the shoulder, pointed to the Tower of Endless Tao, and said, Little junior brother, from today onwards, Kong Duqian will be suppressed in the Endless Tao Tower. In less than 10 years, his cultivation will be refined. At that time, remember to take his 5-color plume feather. Treat it as a gift from 9th Senior Brother. After a pause, he took out a horsetail whisk and said, Junior brother, there is also this treasure which was left by my master in the past. It is called 3,000 UPS and downs. You should also take it. It's a pity that this treasure was seriously damaged in the Tao War of Emperors, and only some of its essence is left. It's my fault for not being able to protect it. Chapter 1832. It was a horsetail whisk named 3,000 Ups and Downs. Like the Tower of Endless Tao, it came from the hands of the master of Mind Mountain. In Lin Sun's eyes, this horsetail whisk didn't look eye-catching. It was 2 feet and 4 inches long, as if it was polished out of white jade, clear and warm. Its handle was in the shape of a blooming lotus, and a string of horsetail whisk silk as thin as a cow's hair floated down from the top, emitting a wisp of obscure luster. Perhaps, as Guyupu said, this treasure was so seriously damaged that it didn't look eye-catching. But the next moment, as Guyupu shook his wrist, a string of horsetail whisk silk rose up and turned into a divine rainbow like a chain of Tao, intertwining in the void. At first glance, one's mind seemed to fall. In the Tao, life and death were unpredictable. Although this treasure is seriously damaged, it still has the power of origin. It's still a great treasure. Guyupu told Lin Sun about the magical effect of 3,000 ups and downs. Lin Sun realized that he had made a mistake. This horsetail whisk could turn into a kind of confinement force, like a cage of Tao, making people trapped in it, as if their lives were out of their control. For countless years, Demon King Du Tian had been suppressed by this horsetail whisk. The 1,800 chains hanging on the god ceiling sky peak were, in fact, phenomena created by the 1,800 horsetail whisk threads. And the horsetail whisk silk in Lin Sun's hand was a wisp of the power of 3,000 ups and downs, which played a key role in the battle between Guyupu and Demon King Dutian. This treasure's power has been greatly depleted. That's why Kong Dutian could occasionally make a move to kill cultivators from the outside world. If it's intact, even the 7 Demon Kings together will be suppressed by this horsetail whisk, let alone Kong Dutian. Guyupu's voice was full of pride. He had seen the real power of this treasure with his own eyes. Lin Sun gasped. When it was intact, it could suppress the 7 Demon Kings in ancient times. Such a treasure was at least an incredible monarch weapon, or even stronger. Guyupu instructed, "Junior brother, you have to take good care of this treasure. Unless it's a critical moment, don't allow it to be exposed. Otherwise, I'm afraid it'll be recognized by others and bring calamity to you." As he spoke, he had already handed the 3,000 floating and sinking to Lin Sun. "I hope that one day you can completely restore this treasure and let it regain its former glory so that it can live up to its name." Lin nodded solemnly. Guyupu smiled from the bottom of his heart and said, "My time has come. In this final moment, do you have anything to ask me?" Lin Sun felt inexplicably sad and said, "Senior brother, is there really no hope of survival?" Guyupu shook her head. Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with a complicated look. The Shin Kong Ghost King was dead. The senior brother who had mastered the Battle Saint technique had also left behind his legacy. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Now, Guyupu was about to pass away as well, and this caused Lin Sun to be unable to help but be dazed. Exactly how many disciples of Mount Innerheart are still alive in this world? Were they now? Lin Sun told this doubt to Guyupu. "In the Battle of Emperors, our Mount Innerheart lost 5 disciples, each of whom was an outstanding figure in the Emperor realm. They were the 14th junior brother Ji Xiao, the 26th junior brother Wu Zong, the 37th junior sister Wen Lu, the 41st junior brother Gu Qingxiu, and the 44th junior brother Xin Yuanzi." Guyupu said, "As for the other senior and junior brothers, some of them follow by master's side, some of them have traveled deep into the Zhou Void a long time ago, and some of them are roaming the starry ancient paths, either to seek the Tao or to prove the Tao." Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "But don't they know that you're trapped here?" Guyupu scratched his head and said, "When I decided to guard this place, I asked Master for permission not to tell other disciples about it." Lin Sun let out a long sigh. What else could he say? From the beginning, Guyupu had already been prepared. For him, death might really be a regretless end. "Junior brother." Guyupu's voice became ethereal. Only then did Lin Sun notice that wisps of light rain were flying away from Guyupu's body, making his figure almost vanish and about to disappear completely. "Would you like to drink with me again?" Guyupu was a dull person, but at this last moment, he seemed extremely heroic and free. He raised a jar of wine and looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun's nose was a little sour. He took a deep breath and also raised a jar of wine. Guyupu laughed heartily, raising his head to drink to his heart's content. Bang! The empty wine jar fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Guyupu's figure also disappeared completely. In the void, there was only a ray of light. In the light and shadow, there was a looming figure like a mountain striding towards the end of the void. Then, this ray of light turned into a wisp of obscure power and poured into Lin Sun's eyebrows. "I have Huangting Dharma, which gives birth to 5 spirits. Dantian is divided into 3 flavors. Xinhua turns Tao wheel. Miao Miao Jinwei. Tao platform opens the gate of heaven." In Lin Sun's heart, a series of magic incantations resounded. In the end, these sounds condensed into a Huangting scripture of the Great Way. Wood in the east, fire in the south, earth in the central, metal in the west, and water in the north. Therefore, yellow was the central color. The court referred to the 4 directions inside and outside. The Huangting scripture described the essence of above the Great Way, "I am the center." This was the Tao that Guyupu pursued. It was his understanding and summary of the Great Way. He condensed it into a scripture and left it to Lin Sun before he died. After a long time, Lin Sun woke up and was lost in thought for a moment. Then he picked up the jar and drank it silently. It was not until later years that Lin Sun learned that in the Taoism War of Emperors, there was a wooden-looking man with a battle axe like a woodcutter in the wild. He killed 19 emperors in a row. His power was like light, illuminating the sky. From that time onward, so long as it was in existence at the Imperial Emperor realm, there wasn't a single person that didn't know the name Imperial Monarch Golden Court. But very few people knew that Huangting Emperor came from the Mind Mountain and ranked ninth. His name was Gu Yupu. Boom! With a deafening sound, the tall and precipitous skylocking peak suddenly collapsed, turning into smoke and dissipating in the air. Lin Sun and who stood far away with complicated expressions on their faces. It was a mountain of great danger that caused cultivators to turn pale at the mention of it, yet there were shocking secrets and inside stories hidden beneath it. Gu Yupu, the ninth successor of the Mind Mountain, and Kong Dutian, the head of the 7 ancient demonic emperors. 2 people who could be said to be supreme overlords. But because of a battle of emperors, they had been fighting for so long. In the end, Kong Dutian was suppressed in the Tower of Endless Way. Within 10 years, he would be completely changed and eliminated. As for Gu Yupu, she had already vanished into thin air today. This simple and wooden-looking middle-aged woodcutter drank and chatted with Lin Sun like a kind and amiable elder before he died. He gave the 3,000 floating and sinking to Lin Sun and instructed him to collect the 5 colored feathers left by Kong Dutian after his death. Even when he died, he did not forget to pass on the Huangting scripture of Great Way to Lin Sun. Lin Sun felt sad and inexplicably disappointed. The 9th senior fellow apprentice was not arrogant, unrestrained, romantic, or wise. He was as simple as wood and dull as stone, but he was approachable. Lin Sun would even forget that he was a terrible existence in the Taoism War of Emperors. He said that he was just a woodcutter and the most stupid successor of the Mind Mountain. Even his master said that he was a blockhead. But in Lin Sun's heart, the 9th senior fellow apprentice Gu Yupu was the most respectable person. He was a towering and trustworthy elder. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun forcibly suppressed the rolling emotions in his heart. His eyes were firm, and he murmured in his heart, "Senior fellow apprentice, sooner or later, I will find out the inside story of the Taoism War of Emperors and avenge you. At that time, I will come to drink with you again." Lin Sun would never forget that Gu Yupu once said angrily that he would have killed Kong Dutian if it were not for the secret help of Heaven-Burning Buddha. Nor would he forget that Gu Yupu had been feeling guilty and blaming himself for failing to kill Kong Dutian. Heaven-Burning Buddha, Kong Dutian. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and he kept them in mind. "Brother Lin," Ahu said beside him. Lin Sun turned his head to look. "The dead have passed away." Lin Sun let out a long breath, and his black eyes flashed with cold light. He said, "Ahu, if Meng Yi sees me alive, will he think that he has seen a ghost?" Ahu was stunned, and she couldn't help but smile as a wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of her rosy lips. "Then shall we go meet this good friend?" "Okay." Lin Sun agreed with a smile. Ahu raised her eyebrows and said, "But where should we go?" A voice inexplicably emerged in Lin Sun's heart. "If you can't decide, you can ask Fuchin." He was stiff all over. 9th senior fellow apprentice? However, Lin Sun couldn't find a trace of Gu Yupu's aura, which made Lin Sun sigh in his heart. After thinking about it, he took out 3,000 floating and sinking. "Pilgrimage platform?" Lin Sun said to himself. A wisp of horsetail whisk was raised, like a gentle spring breeze, pointing to the distance. Lin Sun smiled, stroking the handle of the horsetail whisk, and murmured in his heart, "9th senior fellow apprentice, if anyone calls you stupid in the future, I'll beat him up." He had already guessed that this must be Gu Yupu's arrangement for him. Before he could figure out how to act in the forbidden area of Pilgrimage Platform, his senior fellow apprentice had already prepared for him like a spring breeze and rain. "Oh, let's go." Lin Sun no longer hesitated and strode forward. His moon-white clothes fluttered in the wind, and his tall figure was as natural as a banished immortal. Ahu chased after him with a smile. She was keenly aware that Lin Sun seemed to be suddenly happy again. Far away, the figures of the two disappeared in the vast gray world. On the ruins after the collapse of the godlocking peak, an illusory figure stood, wearing a straw cape and a bamboo hat, like a woodcutter. Looking at the direction where Lin Sun and Ahu left, he scratched his head and then laughed. If you can't decide, you can ask Fuchin, junior fellow apprentice. You must remember. Chapter 1833. The Forbidden Area of the Pilgrimage Platform. There was a huge mountain in the depths of the pilgrimage platform. The mountain was 90,000 feet tall, reaching beyond the heavens. It was majestic and majestic, like the first peak that held up the chaos. Rumor had it that this mountain was the core of the Kunlun ruins, and it was called the Kunlun Hill. Since ancient times, many cultivators had suspected that the Kunlun Hill did not belong to the world because it was too majestic and majestic. Even a body refinement sage who could transform into a 10,000-foot tall body would feel as tiny as an ant when standing before this mountain. The pilgrimage platform was located on the Kunlun Hill. At this moment, Meng Yi stood before the Kunlun Hill with a hint of shock. The vast Kunlun is magnificent. Chaotic qi filled the air like waterfalls falling from the sky. The rocks, grass, and trees all emitted a sparkling and wholly divine radiance. In the void, the nomological powers of the various great Tao seemed to materialize, turning into divine rainbows, light rain, auspicious light, divine light, and other phenomena in the void. It was brilliant and dazzling. The great Tao was formless and indistinct, but in the Kunlun Hill, it seemed to be within reach. This was one of the 3 forbidden areas of the Kunlun ruins, a mysterious area that could make any cultivator go crazy. It was rumored that the secret to becoming an emperor or ancestor was hidden here. Now that the mountain path of the Kunlun Hill is covered by the Great Tao Torrent, it will take at least 7 days for it to fade bit by bit. This also means that we still have to wait for 7 days before we can ascend the mountain. Wen Qingxue spoke calmly. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, and she was as beautiful as a fairy. She was surrounded by a group of descendants of the Panwu Tao court, like the stars surrounding the moon, making her seem even more extraordinary. The so-called Great Tao Torrent was a taboo, nomological power of the Great Tao. However, it was too majestic and violent, covering the mountain path of the Kunlun Hill like a flood. Before such power, any cultivator who approached would be drowned and killed. Therefore, those who wanted to ascend the mountain could only wait. Meng Yi grunted in acknowledgement and looked into the distance. They weren't the only ones near the Kunlun Hill. Hua Xingli's group from the Demon Court, the Saber Freak Tang Su of the Frenzy Blade Battle Race, the Scarlet Sun Battle Race, the Black Water Battle Race, the Heaven Ghost Battle Race. Almost all of them were the heirs of the 6 major Tao courts and the 10 major war clans. There were no ordinary cultivators among them. That was because they were not qualified and did not have the strength to reach the Kunlun Hill. One must know that there were tens of thousands of cultivators who had entered the Kunlun ruins this time, but only a small group of people had arrived. However, this small group of people were extremely difficult to deal with. Some of them even made Meng Yi rather fearful. For example, the descendant of the Su clan, Su Ling Kuan, was a terrifying character ranked 13th on the Starry Sky Great Saint ranking. His battle prowess was unmatched. There is also the core descendant of the Zhuanyu clan, Zhuanyu Hong. His personality was cold and his methods were unyielding. He was ranked 10th on the Starry Sky Great Sage board. Such a figure could be said to be an overlord amongst his peers on the Starry Ancient Path, an existence akin to a blazing sun. Meng Yi was very clearly aware that perhaps he could be unafraid of the other opponents here. But if he were to encounter peerless figures like Void Spirit Kuan and Zhuanyu Hong, then he was bound to be in a disadvantageous position. That was why he chose to make a deal with Wen Qingxue, in exchange for Wen Qingxue's help by killing Lin Sun. That way, he wouldn't have to fear people like Void Spirit Kuan and Zhuanyu Hong when he stepped onto the Ascension platform to fight for the fortune. Brother Meng, are you sure that Lin Sun is really dead? Suddenly, Wen Qingxue spoke. Meng Yi restrained his thoughts and said with a smile, "Fairy Qingxue, don't you trust me?" With a flip of his hand, a screen of light appeared, and it reflected the scene of Lin Sun and Ahu being restrained and suppressed by the godlock peak. This madman is too unlucky. He was actually restrained by the godlock peak. Isn't his death too aggrieved? Haha, this kid is ferocious and cruel. He's killed countless people during this period of time, and he's extremely arrogant. It's best if he dies. The disciples of the Panwu Dao court spoke at once, and they were more or less taking pleasure in Meng Yi's misfortune. Only when Qingshue's expression was indifferent as she asked, "What if he's not dead?" Meng Yi could not help but laugh. How is that possible? Since ancient times, all the powerhouses that have been restrained by the godlock peak have died, including an emperor stage existence. The others nodded and agreed with Meng Yi's words. They were all aware of the godlock peak's reputation. It was an extremely ferocious mountain of death. Say, what if he's still alive? When Qingxue repeated herself, this made Meng Yi a little unhappy, but he did not dare to get angry. One Qingxue seemed to be ranked very low on the Starry Sky Great Saints list, barely making it into the top 100. But only Meng Yi knew that in the past 100 years, this fairy of the Panwu Dao court had obtained an unprecedented great fortune, causing her cultivation and foundation to be comparable to before. According to the secret information that Meng Yi had found out, when the Starry Sky Great Saints list was re-ranked a few years later, when Qingxue would definitely soar into the sky and be able to firmly enter the top 30. There was even a high chance that she could make it into the top 10, and Meng Yi still needed when Qingxue's help, so he could only bear with it. He thought for a moment and said, even if this kid is alive, if he wants to go from the Godlock Peak to the Kunlun Hill, he must pass through here. As he spoke, he took out an old and yellowed animal skin map, unfolded it in front of Wen Qingxue, and pointed at a spot on it. This is the hidden Ghost Blood River. It lies across the road, and there are flying night ghosts within it. When they appear in groups, no one in the Saint Realm can stop them, not even with the flying immortal token. Meng Yi looked confident and said with certainty. Wen Qingxue nodded. On the bank of the ghost-laden Blood River, Ahu suddenly stopped, and her pretty face suddenly changed. Oh no, this seems to be the legendary ghost-laden Blood River. Lin Sun also frowned. He had also heard that the ghost-laden Blood River was a famous and dangerous place in the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not sense any danger. Soon, Ahu also noticed that the river was surprisingly calm, without any sign of danger that she had expected. In his palm, a wisp of horsetail whisk fluttered like a wisp of spring breeze guiding the way. Lin Sun and Ahu looked at each other and finally decided to go and explore. When both of them had crossed the dangerous river and reached the other side, there was still no trace of danger. Both of them could not help but be stunned. Ahu was confused. What was going on? Lin Sun looked at the 3,000 floating and sinking in his palm and vaguely understood. He couldn't help but smile. Let's go. Isn't it better that there is no danger? Until the two of them disappeared. The extremely quiet ghost-laden Blood River suddenly rolled. The flying night ghosts who had been lurking in the depths of the river before all seemed to have recovered from the shock and let out a long sigh of relief. However, Lin Sun and Ahu were completely unaware of it. All along the way, they even felt slightly dull, because whenever they encountered some dangerous places, they would actually seem to be very unusual, and there was a strange type of silence around them. No matter how the two of them passed through, there was not the slightest accident. Something's not right. It feels like our luck has taken a turn for the better, and we're blessed by the heavens. Along the way, Ahu didn't know how many times she was surprised, and her eyes were a little unfocused. I don't know whether God exists or not, but I'm sure that we're not just lucky on the way. Lin Sun rubbed the 3,000 floating and sinking in his palm, feeling a surge of warmth in his heart. Perhaps Gyupu had indeed passed away, but as long as there was the 3,000 floating and sinking, it was as if Gyupu had always been silently accompanying them, making them feel at ease and at ease. Brother Meng, Don't forget that Gu Songxin, Tao Jianxing, and the others went to great lengths to set up a trap at the top of Yulong Mountain and prepared so many killing moves. In front of the Kunlun Hill, Wen Qingxue said, but you know the final result. Meng Yi's eyes flickered, and he pointed to the animal skin map, saying, Look, Fairy Qingxue, besides the ghost-laden Blood River, there's also the Thousand Withers Mountain Steel that can trap and kill a Saint King, the Flowing Fire Swamp that even a quasi-emperor can't enter, and he named several places in one breath, all of which were famous and dangerous areas in the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform. No matter how powerful Lin Sun is, he can escape once or twice, but can he escape 3 or 4 times? In the end, even Meng Yi himself felt that it was ridiculous. These assumptions were meaningless, because a godlock sky peak was enough to kill Lin Sun. Do you think I value this person too much? When Qingxue asked, Meng Yi hurriedly shook his head and said, Don't misunderstand, Fairy Qingxue. Let's put it this way. If Lin Sun can appear in front of the Kunlun Hill alive, I, Meng Yi, will kill myself. His words were sonorous and powerful. It even attracted the attention of some other cultivators nearby. For example, Tang Su of the Frenzy Blade Fighting Clan said in surprise, Lin Sun is dead? I was planning to have a good fight in front of the pilgrimage platform. The other cultivators also had different expressions on their faces. Some of them were gloating, some of them were contemplating, and some of them looked as if they had just gotten their revenge. Lin Sun is dead. Damn it, how could he be dead? I haven't gone to get revenge on him yet. The crowd was in an uproar. Seeing this, Meng Yi took advantage of the situation and told them the news that Lin Sun was killed by the Godlock Sky Peak, and he was absolutely sure that it was true. For a moment, even some of the cultivators in the distance were alarmed. For example, Voidling Kuan, whose eyes were as bright as lightning, and his body was flowing with dazzling golden light, could not help but frown when he learned of Lin Sun's death. This lad really died at the right time. If I had met him, he would have died even more miserably. He had planned to avenge Kuan Julin, but he did not expect Lin Sun to die so unexpectedly. Sha Luqing and Ku Du, who were hiding in the dark, were also very surprised, and they looked stunned. The prey that they had their eyes on had died, just like that. For a moment, both of them felt suffocated, and their expressions were ugly. They felt that all their efforts had been in vain. How could Lin Sun die just like that? Sha Luqing looked resentful, and he gnashed his teeth. Ku Du, the black-robed monk, also felt depressed, and he had the urge to curse. This damn Meng Yi had ruined their plan. Chapter 1834. At this time, Meng Yi was announcing his contribution with a calm expression. He said with a smile, Everyone, Lin Sun is dead. I dare not claim credit, but I think you must be happy to lose such a competitor. Sha Youqing's and Ku Du's faces darkened, and they both had the urge to kill Meng Yi. At the same time, thousands of miles away from the Kunlun Hill, Lin Sun and Ahu were walking in the vast gray world. Lin Sun was pondering and comprehending the Great Way Golden Court scripture. Ahu was looking at the scenery along the way. The two moved forward at a moderate speed, as if they were taking a leisurely stroll, unspeakably calm and at ease. Suddenly, Ahu noticed that the breath around Lin Sun was quietly changing like a spring breeze, revealing a warm and clean breath. Looking at Lin Sun's expression, he seemed to be walking forward, but his eyes were deep and shining, as if he was immersed in all the phenomena in the world, unable to extricate himself. Was he comprehending the Tao? Ahu couldn't help gasping. The more she got in touch with Lin Sun, the more she realized how outstanding his talent and foundation were in the pursuit of Tao. The most frightening thing was that Lin Sun had never slacked off. He had been working hard during the time when no one knew about it. It was not frightening to have a foundation, but to work harder than others. Perhaps this was what people like Lin Sun were like. Ahu couldn't help sighing with emotion and slowed down her pace. It was extremely rare to comprehend the Tao. She didn't want to ruin this rare opportunity for Lin Sun to cultivate in a hurry. At this moment, Lin Sun's mind seemed to be completely empty, immersed in the various mysteries of the Great Way Golden Court scripture. This was the embodiment of Gu Yupu's cultivation, left by an expert who could suppress the leader of the 7 primordial demonic emperors. Such an inheritance could be called the treasured scripture of Emperor's Tao. At this time, in the 5 viscera of Lin Sun's body, 5 kinds of Tao light appeared one after another: green, red, yellow, white, and black. The 5 viscera were regarded as the spirit of the 5 viscera. In the East, Imu belonged to the liver and was mainly green. As the saying goes, stagnation of the liver makes it clear and long. The 6 mansions give birth to 3 lights, and the colorful clouds are green and lush. In the yellow court scripture, this was the cultivation method of the liver divine point. In the South, Bing Ding fire belongs to the heart and dominates the red. As the saying goes, the Heart Sutra is one of the 5 kings of the scriptures of the 5 scriptures. The thoughts of movement and stillness are the moral actions. The sun shines in the day, and the sun shines in the dusk. The essence of yin and yang harmonizes. This was the cultivation method of the heart holy point. The central Wuji earth belongs to the spleen and is mainly yellow. The spleen is located in the middle palace and contains the spirit of the spleen. The western Gungshin metal, belonging to the lungs, was mainly white, and the lungs were like an umbrella, representing the golden palace. The northern Renkoe water belonged to the kidney and was mainly black. The kidney was like the water palace of the Xiankei palace. The Grand Tao Golden Court scripture described the profundities of "I'm the center above the Grand Tao," and its foundation was to temper the 5 internal organs of the Grand Tao. When this scripture was perfected, the 5 viscera would be like a deity presiding over it. Divine splendor would rush into the heavens, and each of them would have their own cultivation. Especially during battle, the 5 godly Dharma idols were like 5 clones. During the Tao battle of the emperors a very long time ago, the Golden Hall imperial monarch, Gu Yupu, had transformed into 5 gods. Every single one of them possessed extraordinary might that covered the heavens and the earth, and they slaughtered all his opponents to the point of being utterly defeated and causing blood to flow through the starry sky. After practicing the 5 internal organs of the Grand Tao, the body would have the secrets of the 5 skandhas, the mysteries of the 5 elements, the wonders of the 5 flavors, and the body of the 5 virtues. This was the Grand Tao Golden Court scripture, a supreme scripture created by Gu Yupu. Based on the 5 internal organs of the Grand Tao, it was incomparably wonderful. The 5 clones tempered by this scripture were called the Dharmakaya of the 5 virtues. With the roar of qi, the 5 viscera of Lin Sun were flowing with colorful luster, washing the 5 Taoist palaces of the heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys like a tide. Inside the Taoist palaces, the vitality was overflowing, and there was a mysterious mist constantly fermenting and evaporating. Vaguely, there seemed to be a virtual figure condensing in different Taoist palaces. The green Yi wood is in charge of vitality and opens the gate of life. The wood virtue is also. Waves of mysterious and obscure insights also came to Lin Sun's mind. Only then did he understand that the Grand Tao Golden Court scripture tempered the 5 internal organs, but it also had the wonders of refining the body, qi, and spirit. This was the top of the 3 ways. However, the Grand Tao path pursued by Gu Yupu was based on the 5 internal organs, like the unity of the 5 elements, producing a kind of endless cycle of perfection. This was obviously different from the path pursued by Lin Sun. However, there were many mysteries in the Grand Tao Golden Court scripture, which also broadened Lin Sun's horizons and made him feel enlightened. In this kind of insight, Lin Sun's understanding of Tao and Dharma became more profound, and his own cultivation also rose accordingly. Later, Lin Sun roughly knew that the Grand Tao Golden Court scripture was divided into 4 realms. They were the 5 skandhas, the 5 colors, the 5 flavors, and the 5 virtues. At present, Lin Sun easily entered the 5 skandhas with his cultivation of the great sage realm and accumulated wisps of Taoist palace in the 5 internal organs. These Taoist palace spirits were like illusory Dharma images, which were extremely vague and showed 5 kinds of divine brilliance: green, red, yellow, white, and black. If they could reach the 5 color realm, the 5 true spirits would condense into corporeal forms and display their own colors. For example, the verdant wood true spirit would display the color of everlasting vitality and evergreen. When one reached the 5 flavors realm, the 5 Taoist souls would have their own flavors, just like each person exuding a different charm. As for the 5 virtues realm, they possessed their own divine sense and cultivation. At this point, the 5 internal organs spirit could be tempered and turned into 5 dharmakaya. Each of them was not weaker than the original and had their own magical powers and mysteries. My Dharma is based on the star obliteration and the furnace of Tao as the root. It can accommodate all the Tao in the world and develop all the Dharma in the world. If I can smelt the 5 internal organs spirit in one furnace, it will definitely make my understanding of Tao and Dharma undergo an earth-shaking transformation. Lin Sun was enlightened in his heart. However, he also knew that among the various inheritances he had mastered at present, Taishian sword scripture, infinite devouring scripture, and other inheritances were too supreme for him to integrate now. The same was true of the Great Way Yellow Court scripture. It was also at this time that Lin Sun deeply realized how powerful Gyupu, the seemingly dull and slow-witted 9th senior brother, was in fact. The Great Way Yellow Court scripture alone was enough to make him stunned for eternity. Whoosh, while walking, Lin Sun woke up from the wonderful epiphany. He let out a long breath and looked at the gloomy and oppressive world around him. But there was a sense of tranquility, peace, and emptiness in his heart. At the same time, the aura around him broke through naturally as if it had broken the shackles, producing a roar and making his clothes flutter. The surging power was like a landslide and a tsunami, roaring around his body, and his aura rose steadily. It was like a long rainbow flashing up. The peak of the great sage late stage. The last time he broke through was in the peach source secret realm. After swallowing the peach of immortality, it had only been less than a month since then, and he broke through again. This was his good fortune. If he hadn't come to the Kunlun ruins this time, it would have been wishful thinking for him to have such a rapid transformation in the great sage realm in the outside world. Ahu had been paying attention to Lin Sun's movements. Until now, when she saw him walking forward as if he was strolling leisurely and breaking through the realm calmly and naturally, her heart was in turmoil. It seemed that any incredible thing in this world became logical when it came to Lin Sun. Congratulations, Brother Lin, for breaking through again. Ahu congratulated him with a smile. Lin Sun was touched and said with emotion, "A peach of immortality is equivalent to 10 years of hard cultivation. Comprehending it overnight is not inferior to obtaining the fortune of heaven. It's really beyond my expectations to be able to break through at this time." The two chatted as they walked forward. Not long after, they saw a mountain in the distance. It was majestic and filled the universe, beautiful and vast. Even though they were extremely far away, they still couldn't help but feel small in their hearts. That mountain was so majestic that it didn't seem to exist in this world. Kunlun Hill. Ahu spat out these words softly, his eyes bright. At the same time, the 3,000 floating sinks in Lin Sun's hand fell silent. The horsetail whisk that had been leading the way for Lin Sun and the others also fell silently. Lin Sun put the treasure away carefully. A murderous look appeared in his eyes as he said, "Let's go and see our old friend." Ahu pursed her lips and smiled. "Let's go." In front of Kunlun Hill, the powerhouses from his 6 Tao courts, the 10 war clans, and other major forces were all waiting. The power of the torrent of the great Tao that enveloped the Kunlun Hill was on the verge of dissipating. This made many people restless. It's been so many days, but there's still no news of Lin Sun. Could he really be dead? Tang Su, who was dressed in a black robe and holding the long and narrow, sky-cutting saber, suddenly muttered. Many people had strange expressions on their faces. They probably knew that the reason why Tang Su could not forget Lin Sun was because she wanted to fight him to her heart's content. That was all. Moreover, this woman with the title of Saber Addict had always been like this. She never cared about worldly grudges and only had eyes for battle. Miss Tang Su, I've said it many times. Lin Sun is really dead. Meng Yi felt helpless. These days, Tang Su had mentioned Lin Sun more than once, leaving him speechless. He was just a dead man. Was he worth so much attention? Tang Su nodded and said, "Is that so?" The corner of Meng Yi's mouth twitched. He could no longer be bothered to explain. Believe it or not, Lin Sun is already dead. I've said a few days ago, if Lin Sun is still alive, I can even kill myself. His words were powerful and resonant. This made the faces of Sha Luqing and Ku Du, who were hiding in the dark, sink. They felt stifled and hated Meng even more. Is that so? Then you can kill yourself. At this moment, an indifferent voice suddenly came from afar. Many people were startled and looked over. When they clearly saw the figure drifting over from afar, everyone revealed looks of shock and astonishment. How could it be him? At this moment, Meng Yi also felt like he was struck by lightning. This voice, why was it so familiar? Almost subconsciously, he turned his head and looked into the distance. Goldfish would like to clarify that everyone is unhappy with the book and you're complaining about it. That's why I've never deleted or refuted the posts in the book review section. However, saying that I plagiarized is like poking at my back. I can't tolerate it. Chapter 1835. In the distance, a man and a woman walked side by side in the gloomy world. The man was tall, and his black hair fluttered as he walked. His every movement was ethereal, and his black eyes were as deep as the abyss. The woman's eyes were bright, and her skin was as smooth as jade. She was as beautiful as a fairy, but she was born with an alluring charm. It was Lin Sun and Ahu. When he saw them, Meng Yi's body stiffened, and his expression changed drastically. He could no longer maintain his composure, and he cried out involuntarily, "You! How could you still be alive?" His voice was filled with disbelief, as if he had seen a ghost. The other cultivators were also shocked. Didn't they say that they had all met with misfortune? How could they suddenly appear alive? Could Meng Yi have lied? One Qing Xue frowned, and her clear eyes rippled. What she was worried about at the beginning had happened. However, she could not imagine how Lin Sun and the others had escaped from Godlock Sky Peak. This was too unbelievable and had never happened in the past. "Meng Yi, you've made me suffer," Tang Su shouted, appearing to be very angry. But when she saw Lin Sun, she cheered up again. "It's good that you're not dead. I haven't fought you to my heart's content. It would be a pity if you died. That bastard Meng Yi, how dare he lie to us?" In the dark, Sha Luqing and Ku Du were furious. These days, they had been frustrated countless times, all because of the rumors Meng Yi had spread. The two of them couldn't help but feel even more furious because of this. "We'll deal with Meng Yi after we kill Lin Sun." Sha Luqing gritted his teeth. "Of course," Ku Du said expressionlessly. "That's Lin Sun." At the same time, Kuan, who was standing in the distance, also noticed Lin Sun. His eyes that were brighter than the sun flashed with divine light. Originally, he had some regrets that he could not avenge Kuan Jilin, but now, that regret no longer existed. "Interesting." Hua Xingli smiled, and a look of interest appeared on his sickly, pale, and handsome face. He believed that Meng Yi would not lie. But Lin Sun could escape from Godlock Sky Peak. This was too curious. How did he do it? For a moment, the crowd was restless, and the atmosphere changed. All of this was because Lin Sun, whom they thought was long dead, had suddenly appeared before them alive. "Brother Meng, stop daydreaming. Kill yourself to broaden our horizons." Ahu smiled sweetly, her voice resounding through the field. Meng Yi's expression changed. He took a deep breath and said, "It is indeed surprising that all of you were able to walk out of God's ceiling sky peak alive." Before he could finish, Lin Sun interrupted. Cut the crap. Kill yourself. Everyone had a strange expression on their faces. Many people were watching the show. Meng Yi was a pure-blooded descendant of the Qiongqi combat clan. He was elegant and handsome, and his background was unfathomable. However, he was clearly at a disadvantage now. His expression was gloomy as he coldly said, "Brother Lin, it was just a joke. You actually believed it. Don't you think you're very stupid?" Lin Sun strode over, smiling as he walked. Joke? Meng Lin bye as he bye he bye he a as he as. Don't you think you're despicable? Everyone could not help but look askance at him. Only then did they realize that Lin Sun had suffered at Godlock Sky Peak because of Meng Yi. Meng Yi was livid. He was about to say something, but was stopped by Wen Qingxue. She looked at Lin Sun and said, "Let's not talk about past grievances. You, Lin Sun, are well aware of the current situation. If we fight, it will only be disadvantageous to everyone. Why don't we settle our grievances after the battle on the ceremony platform?" Lin Sun sneered. "Who do you think you are?" The crowd was in an uproar. Wen Qingxue, ranked third on the Starry Sky Beauty list, was adored by countless peerless figures. She was the center of attention wherever she went. Who dared to disrespect her? How dare you? Insolent words. Lin Sun, do you want to die? The descendants of the martial arts court were the first to lose their cool and berated Lin Sun. Even when Qingxue was taken aback, she did not expect Lin Sun's words to be so rude and rude. Her eyes flashed with coldness. The atmosphere in this area also became tense. Some of the experts from the prehistoric Taoist court, the Tao Battle Clan, the Blood Kylan Battle Clan, and the Heaven and Earth Taoist court were ready to make a move. At the peak of Yulong Mountain, Lin Sun killed many people, causing the descendants of the major forces to suffer heavy casualties and almost be wiped out. Now that they met their enemies, they were naturally enraged. If the descendants of the Panwu Taoist court started a fight with Lin Sun, they would definitely take the opportunity to help. Lin Sun, you're too arrogant. You're lucky to have survived the Godlock Sky Peak, but you still came to the Kunlun Hill recklessly. Aren't you afraid of getting into trouble? Meng Yi's eyes flashed, and he said coldly. Of course, he knew that there were many descendants of the major forces who saw Lin Sun as their enemy. Lin Sun ignored them and continued forward with a calm expression. It seems that you're not going to commit suicide. Let me help you. Boom. Without hesitation, he slashed down with his palm and fingers like a sword. An incomparably thick sword chi swept out, brilliant and vast, with the sun, moon, and stars floating in it, reflecting a terrifying and fierce power. You're courting death. How dare you? What an arrogant bastard. There was a burst of angry voices in the field. No one had expected Lin Sun to be so strong and domineering. He didn't care about anything else, and how many enemies were eyeing him covetously. He directly made a move. The void collapsed, and the brilliant sword chi slashed down. Meng Yi snorted coldly. His elegant and handsome face was ferocious, and a violent, terrifying, and bloodthirsty aura rushed out of his body. As he pressed his hand, a bloody fist print condensed, and dazzling Taoist patterns appeared on it, making the world dim. Qiongqi hegemonic seal. Legend had it that in ancient times, the ancestor of Qiongqi could smash mountains and rivers and make the stars fall from the sky with a single claw. It was extremely terrifying. Although Meng Yi's attack was not as good as that of his ancestor, it had the power to overturn mountains and rivers and destroy all living beings. Many strong men narrowed their eyes. In the Qiongqi battle clan, Meng Yi was an exception. He was elegant, handsome, gentle, and humble, completely different from the other clansmen who were violent and bloodthirsty. Moreover, Meng Yi was low-key and rarely fought. He had always been unfathomable and unfathomable. But now, many people finally understood that under Meng Yi's gentle and humble appearance, there was actually an extremely violent and terrifying power. Just like this attack of his, it caused many people to be shocked. Boom! A sword and a seal collided in the void, stirring up the law and splashing the divine light. In practically an instant, the bloodthirsty and ruthless fist mark exploded with a bang, and it was crushed into a rain of light that scattered down. Then, with a bang, Meng Yi's body was sent flying by the sword. The vast and brilliant sword, Qi shook his cheeks and made his cheeks pale. He coughed up blood, and his body fell to the ground hard, splashing smoke and dust all over the sky. There was a dead silence in the field, and many people gasped. Meng Yi was thwarted by just one sword strike. How terrible was Lin Sun's combat power? It seems that you're only good at conspiracies and tricks. Your real strength is just SOSO. Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning. After a successful attack, he didn't stop. He stepped in the void and attacked again. His speed was extremely fast, and his power was boundless. Whoosh! A ray of sword Qi came across the sky like the practicing martial scripture, vast and heavy. When Qing Xue made a move, her white clothes fluttered, and her appearance was as beautiful as a fairy. Her graceful figure was flowing with brilliant sword intent, stunning the field. Lin Sun didn't even look at her. Suddenly, Tai Xian's sword Qi swept out of his body and turned into a mountain of swords. Boom! The sky and earth shook, and the sun and moon lost their light. One Qing Xue's sword Qi was suppressed and crushed inch by inch, causing the void to crack, creating a terrible storm of sword Qi. And her figure staggered in the void. There was another commotion in the field, and many people's expressions changed slightly. Lin Sun, who was called the Devil God, was too strong. Good. Only Tang Su's eyes were bright, and she couldn't help but praise. Lin Sun's performance aroused her desire to fight. You seem to be very weak in a head-on battle. Lin Sun's expression was cold. One Qing Xue might be a fairy in the eyes of others, but to Lin Sun, this woman was extremely detestable. Since he entered the Kunlun ruins, she had launched a sneak attack on him more than once. When Qing Xue frowned, with a clang, she took out a golden long sword that emitted an illusory Tao light. The blade of the sword glowed and illuminated the world. Whoosh! Her figure flashed through the sky and attacked again. She circulated her cultivation with all her might, and she was like an ethereal female, sword immortal, extremely fierce. Kill him. At the same time, the other successors of the Panwu Dao court attacked Lin Sun together. For a time, the heavens and the earth shook. It was filled with terrifying Dao techniques and treasure light, and layer after layer of terrifying phenomena appeared. It should be known that none of the powerhouses who could arrive at the Kunlun Hill were ordinary. Almost all of them were peak-level great saints. There was no lack of top figures on the Starry Sky Great Saints leaderboard. Such a battle was naturally extremely terrifying and shocking. Lin Sun, you'll definitely die this time. Meng Yi and some other powerhouses of the Qiongxi battle clan also attacked together. Looking from afar, Lin Sun was surrounded by enemies in all directions, besieging and killing him. Ahu didn't attack because she knew that Lin Sun, who had just broken through the realm not long ago, had become different from when he was fighting on the peak of Yulong Mountain. Now, what Lin Sun needed was a chance to vent his anger, not help. You're just a mantis trying to stop a chariot. In the void, Lin Sun took a deep breath with a calm expression. His body seemed to have turned into a chaotic furnace, and the power in his body burst out. Boom! He took a step forward like a real dragon coming out of the abyss. The terrifying power disintegrated all the nearby attacks and dispersed them. He moved freely and deduced his own Dao and Dao. He was like a demon descending to the world, sweeping through the battlefield. The power of his power made all the surroundings dim. Looking from afar, his body was like the sun, shining brightly and unconcealable. Die. Not long after, Lin Sun spat out a word. As if his words were the law, the broken blade suddenly swept out and killed a powerhouse of the Panwu Dao court who was close to him. Puff! The head flew into the air, and blood sprayed like a waterfall. Chapter 1836. In the distance, Hua Xingli, Shuling Kun, Zhuan Yuheng, Tang Su, and others were all paying attention to the battlefield and were attracted by Lin Sun's terrifying combat power. Many people revealed looks of surprise, because they didn't expect that Lin Sun could still be so strong under the siege of a group of strong people led by Wen Qingxue and Meng Yi. When I first met him, he was only at the early stage of the Great Sage realm. How long has it been? He is already at the late stage of the Great Sage realm. Hua Xingli's eyes were deep and flowing with demonic flames. Others also had a strong intuition that during this period of time, Lin Sun must have obtained extraordinary fortune, so he could make rapid progress on the road of cultivation. Condense. On the battlefield, a handsome man in a golden robe shouted. This was the successor of the Panwu Taoist court, a peerless great sage with outstanding combat power. Swish! A completely pitch-black saber that was suffused with violet divine flames transformed into a ray of light that shot through the sky as it slashed down furiously. It was just a saber, but it carried the vast power of heaven, the divine flame, and the law. This was the Panwu genuine flame cut, which was left by an emperor of the Panwu Taoist court. When cultivated to a high level, the cut was like a sky fire pouring out, burning the world in ghosts. He used his trump card so soon. Many people's pupils shrank. They could see that the man in a golden robe was desperate to use a terrifying killing move. Break! The man in a golden robe shouted, his eyes flashing with lightning. His whole body seemed to be integrated with this cut, fierce and fierce to the extreme. With this blow, in the re-ranking of the Great Sage list a few years later, there will be a place for him in the top 50. Hua Xingli clapped his hands and praised. Some other peerless figures in the field also nodded secretly. The momentum of this cut was really amazing. Just when many people were worried about Lin Sun, who was besieged. Die! Lin Sun looked indifferent and pressed down casually. Boom! A Taowu seal, emitting earth-shaking momentum, was condensed like the seal of heaven presented by a Taoist master or the ancient divine mountain held by a god. This seal integrated the mystery of the Great Way Furnace scripture with the power of a fist shaking the sky, the power of the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon, and the speed of the first cut of Tian Yuan. As soon as it flashed out, it carried an unparalleled force that caused space to be blasted apart like paper. In front of it, the Panwu True Flame Slash was like a fragile piece of rotten wood, and it was smashed apart inch by inch. Boom! The momentum of the Swanee seal didn't reduce in the slightest, and it suddenly enlarged to the point of blotting out the sky as it smashed down fiercely, and the gold-robed man along with his blade were completely shattered into pieces. In the end, only a rain of blood filled the sky. There was dead silence. Both the overmatches who were besieging Lin and the onlookers in the distance were dumbfounded. Even who was extremely confident in Lin Sun, couldn't help but stick out his tongue. He didn't expect that such a top successor of Panwu Taoist court with outstanding combat power couldn't even resist one blow from Lin Sun and was killed by one seal. An uproar arose in the surroundings. Be it in terms of foundation, cultivation, or realm, the golden-robed man shouldn't have lost so badly. After all, this was a peerless great saint, a dazzling heaven's favorite with extraordinary talent. Moreover, this was an all-out attack, a trump card. But in front of Lin, they were like moths darting into the fire. What a strong power! Hua Xingli, Zuling Kuan, and others also showed a solemn expression. Lin Sun's method was extremely simple. It was like a casual attack, but the power was terrifying. Zhuan Yuheng seemed to see something and showed a strange expression. 3 Tao into 1, and even the self-cultivation method he created is so domineering. This man's cultivation is too unique and unheard of. Ordinary practitioners couldn't see through Lin Sun at all, because he gave people the feeling that he was like a deep abyss, unfathomable. But for peerless figures like Zhuan Yuheng, who ranked in the top 10 of the Great Saint list of Starry Sky, Lin Sun's means had already reached an extremely terrifying level. It seemed simple, but in fact it was a kind of phenomenon that the Great Way was the simplest and only the essence was the only thing. If this man doesn't die, he will be a strong opponent in this battle on the pilgrimage platform. Zhuan Yuheng made a prediction. Boom! In the battlefield, an overmatch of the Qiangqi battle clan waved his sleeve and took out a blood-colored jade cauldron with red dragons coiling around it. 49 blood dragons rushed out of it, roaring with their heads held high. This was clearly a powerful ancient treasure, its quality unordinary. But in just a moment, it was blown away by Lin Sun's punch. 49 blood dragons burst like dead snakes, and blood light spread. Buzz, a dazzling halberd swept across, setting off billowing black smoke, which evolved into hundreds of ferocious phantoms of ghosts and gods, like 100 ghosts walking at night. However, before they could get close to Lin Sun, they were shattered by a golden Taoist sound released from Lin Sun's lips. The practitioner holding the halberd was shaken to the point that his 7 apertures bled, and his soul was severely damaged. He let out a shrill scream. Then, silver flying forks, green Taoist swords, golden whips, and black giant axes came from all directions one after another. But without exception, they were all defeated by Lin Sun as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. He seemed to have turned into a great furnace, invulnerable to all kinds of methods, and his expression was neither sad nor happy. In the battlefield, he attacked the enemies from all directions, domineering and unparalleled. Not to mention being suppressed, it was difficult to get close to him. His domineering and invincible demeanor caused many exclamations inside and outside the battlefield. Some were surprised, some were shocked, some were angry, and some were incredulous. Under the Kunlun Hill, there was a turbulent, chaotic, noisy, and bloody scene. How is it possible? Meng Yi's elegant and handsome face was livid and ferocious. He didn't underestimate Lin Sun from the beginning. Otherwise, he wouldn't have resorted to conspiracies to trap Lin Sun, because he couldn't guarantee that he could kill Lin Sun in a head-on confrontation. But he still didn't expect that Lin Sun's combat power was so incredible that even if he joined hands with Wen Qingxue and others, they couldn't gain the slightest advantage. The most terrible thing was that at this time, several of their people were killed and seriously injured. Chop! Meng Yi did not dare to let his guard down as the snow-white broken blade suddenly shot towards him. In the end, although he resolved the attack, Lin Sun took the opportunity to kill 3 strong warriors of the Qiangqi battle clan in a row like a dragon coming out of the abyss with his fists as fast as lightning. Bang! 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 The 3 figures were torn apart in the void as if they had been hit by a holy mountain. Blood rained down, and the scarlet color was dazzling, causing a burst of exclamation in the field. Lin Sun, you'll die a horrible death. Meng Yi's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He was completely enraged. Brother Meng, you still have a chance to commit suicide now. If you wait for me to take action, it will be very uncomfortable to commit suicide passively. Lin Sun said calmly. His cold voice resounded through the field with a kind of piercing coldness that made people tremble. Boom! As he spoke, Lin Sun slapped down and killed a descendant of Panwu Taoist court who attacked him sneakily. His head exploded directly, and the headless body fell to the ground like a broken sack, turning into a pool of flesh and blood. At this point, everyone could see that the situation of this battle was clear from the beginning. However, no one expected that Lin Sun, who was alone, would be the one with the upper hand. In front of him, no matter how many successors of the Qiangqi fighting clan and the Panwu Taoist court there were, they couldn't gain any advantage at all. Instead, they were killed one by one. This was shocking because Lin Sun's combat power was so amazing that it exceeded people's expectations and imagination again and again. Everyone felt shocked as they watched his figure move about freely in the field. How great was Meng Yi? But in the head-on confrontation, he had been suppressed to the point that he couldn't even lift his head. How amazing was Wen Qingxue? Her coiling martial ease sword was superb and had reached the pinnacle, seeming to have a great momentum of its own. But up to now, she hadn't been able to pin down Lin Sun. In other words, the rhythm of the whole battle was firmly controlled by Lin Sun. Everyone, if you choose to stand by and let this bastard live, it will be your time to die. No one can escape. On the battlefield, Meng Yi roared with disheveled hair and a ferocious look. In the distance of the battlefield, the experts of the Wilderness Taoist Court, the Heaven and Earth Taoist Court, the Blood Kylan Fighting Clan, the Tao Fighting Clan, and other forces all looked uncertain and struggled in their hearts. At the top of Yulong Mountain, Lin Sun fought alone and killed many of their fellow disciples and clansmen. This was a blood feud that couldn't be resolved. Originally, they didn't need Meng Yi's reminder at all. They would choose the right opportunity to hit Lin Sun when he was down. But witnessing Lin Sun's invincible fighting style, they all hesitated and wavered in their hearts. Let's kill this man together. Yes, if we don't eradicate this man now, it will be our turn when he recovers. Finally, someone gritted his teeth, shouted, and rushed into the battlefield. Seeing this, the others also showed a fierce look and swarmed up. For a time, except for Hua, Xingli, and others of the Diabolism Court, Tang Su and others of the Frenzy Saber Fighting Clan, and Kuan Voidling and others. All the descendants of the great forces who had a grudge against Lin Sun took action, because Lin Sun's performance had made them feel uneasy and threatened. If they hesitated, there would be endless troubles in the future. Rumble, the situation of the battlefield suddenly changed. With the participation of a group of strong people, the world under the Kunlun hill became more turbulent and terrifying. Who couldn't help frowning in awe. But before she could do anything, some people had already swarmed up to her and attacked her. Obviously, the intention of these strong people was very simple. They wanted to trap and kill Ahu, to restrain and threaten Lin Sun and distract him. A sneer appeared at the corner of Ahu's mouth. These guys had a good plan, but did they really think she was easy to bully? When she was in the treasure refining place, she could block the killing of top figures such as Kuan Julin and Liu Beigu alone. On the other hand, since she consumed the immortality peach, her cultivation had undergone a complete transformation, and it couldn't be compared to the past. However, whether it was the top of Yulong Mountain or the current battle, Lin Sun had always been fighting alone on the field, and she rarely had a chance to attack. But it was obvious that this made people think she was easy to bully. Buzz, in her white and delicate palm, there appeared a mighty sword intent, like the ancient purple clouds. Her graceful figure was ethereal, flowing with illusory light, and rushed up. Chapter 1837. Puff. As soon as she made a move, Ahu's figure was like a strand of a rain of light that swiftly appeared before an expert, and then her wrist that was fair like a green onion twisted. The purple sword chi in his palm sliced through that person's throat with unparalleled sharpness, and a huge head flew into the air. When the headless corpse's blood sprayed out like a waterfall, Ahu's figure had already disappeared from where he stood. Like a dream, he slashed towards his next target. Cries of surprise resounded in the surroundings. Before, who had been watching from the sidelines. Although she looked like a fairy and was extremely charming, people subconsciously regarded her as Lin Sun's subordinate. It was only at this moment when she made her move. She killed her enemy in an instant in a clean and efficient manner with an ethereal and illusory posture. It turned out that this woman was not someone who could be easily bullied. Her fighting style was completely different from Lin Sun's. Her figure was ethereal like a wisp of smoke, and she was incredibly fast. The expressions of all the experts that swarmed overchanged, and they seemed as if they were facing a great enemy. All of them didn't dare underestimate Chun Shi any longer, and they attacked with all their might without the slightest hesitation. For a moment, the light of treasures circulated and Tao techniques rumbled. All of them rushed towards Ahu alone, competing on the number of Dharma treasures. Ahu smiled. She was extremely charming and flirtatious. With a wave of her hand, so. 13 brilliant green flying swords flashed out. Every single flying sword was branded with Tao markings, and they were like a group of flying fish that moved nimbly through space while emanating a myriad of strands of hazy sword chi. An entire set of green Sun Tao swords. With a flick of Ahu's finger, a group of swords whistled out and slaughtered the world, and clanging sword cries resounded throughout the world. Rise! Ahu pulled out a wooden hairpin from his hair and tossed it into the air. The wooden hairpin transformed into a black, true phoenix. Dark divine flames flowed out from its wings, and it let out a clear cry into the nine heavens, burning the heavens and destroying the earth. That was not the end. In the following period of time, Ahu once again took out an emerald green spirit flag, which reflected the mountains and rivers. A lotus-shaped palace lamp was divided into 12 corners. It reflected the shadows of 12 fairies that looked like they were flying in the sky. They danced in the air with colorful streamers. A pair of faint purple copper bells had a melodious and pleasant sound. They released purple sound waves that spread out like ripples. A string of indigo pearls, a Tao diagram with a blood-colored azalea in full bloom. It was a golden Rui scepter with dragon and tiger Taoist patterns carved on its head and tail for a time, whose body was coiled by the glow of treasures that covered the sky. All the treasures were filled with intelligence, profound and unfathomable, as they emanated different phenomena. It dyed this expanse of space with gorgeous colors, and it was extremely beautiful. Heavens! What the F*** CK? Too rich. Is this the gathering treasure fairy? The eyes of some of the experts who were watching the battle from afar almost fell out of their sockets, and their expressions were extremely interesting. This scene vividly demonstrated what it meant to be a tycoon, what it meant to be rich and imposing. The most eye-catching thing was that every single one of the treasures was a miraculous ancient saint artifact. Each of them had their own power and were extremely rare. Any cultivator would be satisfied if they were able to possess one or two of these treasures. Yet now, Ahu had casually waved his hand, and a large group of treasures had charged out. This scene was too shocking. After all, practically all these experts here were from the top Grand Dao sects of the 6 Great Dao Courts and 10 Great Battle Clans. Every single one of them possessed abundant resources and resources that were far from something an ordinary cultivator could compare to. However, many people were on the verge of being ashamed to the point of being unable to raise their heads when facing such a scene, and they could only sigh at their inferiority. A very long time ago, there was once in existence called the Great Emperor of Plentiful Treasure. His combat strength could only be considered to be ordinary amongst imperial emperors, yet he was a ferocious figure that caused the expressions of others to turn pale at the mention of his name. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one was willing to go against him. The reason was very simple. The Great Emperor of Plentiful Treasure lacked everything, but he didn't lack treasures, so long as he fought. Then even imperial emperors who possessed greater combat strength and resources than him would be unable to resist the bombardment of the numerous treasures in his possession. There's no battle in this world that can't be resolved by treasures. If there is, then throw a few more treasures at it. These were the famous words of the Great Emperor of Plentiful Treasure, and it had always been circulating in the starry sky like a legend. At this moment, the extravagance revealed by Ahu is slightly similar to the elegant demeanor of the Great Emperor of Plentiful Treasure from all those years ago, and it caused the eyes of others to feel shocked and covetous. However, those experts who were fighting Ahu were both shocked and furious, and the pressure they felt multiplied. They were unable to voice out their bitterness. Ahu's combat strength was extremely strong, and he had the help of so many treasures. For a moment, he showed a kind of overwhelming momentum, causing many opponents to be flustered and unable to raise their heads. Originally, they planned to deal with Ahu to contain and threaten Lin Sun, but it was obvious that it was destined to be impossible. At this moment, Lin Sun, who was alone and surrounded by many enemies, finally broke out completely. He released all of his strength without any reservation. Boom! The momentum around his body suddenly changed, and he replaced the Great Wave Furnace Scripture with the Infinite Devouring Scripture. His body turned into a great abyss that covered the sky, and his momentum became boundlessly overbearing. And in his hands, 2 swords, Avicii and Yuan-Tu, appeared. Avicii was like a great prison. Yuan-Tu was like sticks. Behind him, the great abyss floated and sank. Looking from afar, Lin Sun was like the ruler of the abyss purgatory walking out of the sticks. His terrifying momentum made the world dim. Go to hell. His black hair was flying, and his black eyes were full of blazing fighting intent and killing intent. His figure moved horizontally, devouring the sky and devouring the earth, and the two swords in his hands slashed out angrily. Bang! A spear burst into pieces in an instant, and the owner of the spear was killed by a sword. His blood spilled in the sky, and he didn't even have time to scream before he died. Go to hell. Lin Sun's expression was neither sad nor happy. He swept the sword horizontally in all directions. In the process, all the treasures and Taoist magic that came towards him were crushed and swallowed by the great abyss, turning into surging power and being released. This was, my body is immeasurable, and I could devour endless. Come on, suppress him together. Kill. There was a burst of roars in the field, shaking the sky. But it was doomed to be in vain. When he was in the early stage of the Great Sage Realm, Lin Sun could kill peerless figures like Yin, Chunjun, and Luong, who were ranked on the Great Sage list of Starry Sky. When he was in the middle stage of the Great Sage Realm, he could kill hundreds of invincible opponents in the Yulong Mountain alone. Let alone now, no one knew what an amazing transformation it represented for Lin Sun, whose foundation was basically unparalleled to break through to the next level of cultivation. No one knew that from a long time ago. What Lin Sun sought was the invincible road of my way is the only one in the world. Puff, puff, puff. In just more than a dozen breaths, strong people were killed one after another. Some were cut in half, some were pierced between the eyebrows, some were cut in half at the waist, and some were directly crushed by the sword chi, scarlet red blood, furious roars, and miserable shrill cries interweaved together to form a soul-stirring scene of slaughter. And Lin Sun in the scene was like an abyss, devouring life. Why is his combat power so strong? Meng, he was about to go crazy. Before, he couldn't suppress Lin Sun even when he joined forces with Wen Qingxue and others. Now, there were many descendants of great forces joining in. It was still not enough. Meng, he couldn't imagine how there could be such a nature-defying existence in the world, which completely subverted his cognition and imagination. From the beginning to the end, Wen Qingxue didn't say a word. She seemed very quiet, but her beautiful face was gradually covered with a lingering haze. Lin Sun's strength had also caused a great impact on her mind. It should be known that she had also obtained a great fortune in the Kunlun ruins and refined a Dao fruit. Originally, she had absolute confidence that she would be able to be ranked at the top next time the Starry Sky Great Sage list was re-ranked. But the combat power that Lin Sun showed shattered her confidence. He was a single person, yet he was still able to move about freely and unstoppably while facing so many enemies. His terrifying might even caused her to feel terrified. In contrast, the gap between her and Lin Sun was imperceptibly highlighted. With his current combat power, I'm afraid he can easily rank in the top 10 of the Starry Sky Great Sage list, right? Wen Qingxue's heart was in turmoil. She had once seen a peerless figure who was ranked 5th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. His disdainful and proud demeanor made her unable to help but admire him. Compared to that person, Lin Sun's cultivation was slightly inferior, but the invincible demeanor was shockingly similar. Boom! The battle became more and more intense. The sky was dark, and sand and stones were flying. Under the incomparably majestic Kunlun Hill, the scale of the battle was grand, and the situation was tragic. It was rare, even on the Starry Sky Ancient Road. Once the news got out, it was bound to cause a great uproar. Far away, Hua Xingli's sickly pale face was already dignified, and his eyes were filled with demonic flames. So this is your true trump card. Lin Sun's strength made Hua Xingli unable to calm down, and he felt an invisible pressure. He could not imagine how such an incredible and peerless person could come out of the ancient desolation region. Young master, it's time to act. This man is getting stronger and stronger. If we let him escape this time, he is bound to become even more terrifying in the future. Shueqingyi beside him was extremely anxious. Only he knew how terrifying Lin Sun was. Back in the Nine Regions battlefield, Lin Sun suppressed the leaders of the other 8 regions with his true sage realm cultivation. And now, he was countless times stronger than he was back then. All of this happened in just a few years. It could be foreseen that if Lin Sun was given more time, who could suppress him in the future? Idiot. Huashingli glanced at Xue Qingyi. At this time, he was still hot-headed and insisted on being Lin Sun's enemy. Obviously, he was out of his mind and did not know how to judge the situation at all. At the same time, Voidling Kuan and Zhuan Yuheng were also attentively watching Lin Sun's every move on the battlefield. Everyone's heart was in turmoil. Yes, the strength Lin Sun displayed had once again exceeded their expectations, and they began to pay attention and even be vigilant. Similarly, they did not ignore Ahu's performance. The strength Lin Sun displayed was not to be underestimated, but the means Ahu showed also surprised them. A woman as beautiful as a fairy with peerless charm not only had outstanding combat strength, but also possessed so many rare ancient treasures. Who dared to ignore her?